Chapter 60. Yang Yi didn't know that while he was worried about Murphy, Murphy was also worried about her gains and losses. On the first day Murphy brought Shishi home, because she was eating and talking with Sister Ling. Murphy didn't get home until the middle of the night. Naturally, she forgot to call Yang Yi. But when Murphy thought about it the next day, she was annoyed. She didn't call Yang Yi, so he didn't want to call her? She brought her daughter home, so why didn't he care if she got home or if there were any other problems? So, Murphy didn't contact Yang Yi the next day. In the end, Yang Yi really ignored her. Murphy was really sad. In a fit of anger, she directly deleted Yang Yi's number from her phone's contact list. Actually, this didn't help. She didn't need to memorize Yang Yi's number because she bought Yang Yi's phone and SIM card. She just happened to buy 2 consecutive numbers, one for Yang Yi and one for her. Because the release of the new album was imminent, Murphy didn't have much time to spend on love. She simply put it aside and put all her energy on work. Until this day, Mo Fei stole half a day of leisure, so she took her daughter to eat Western food. She went to a French restaurant that had a rating of 3 stars on the International Food Association. The International Food Association's evaluation has always been known for being objective and harsh. Just like the Michelin in Yang Yi's previous life, their food critics were all secretive and no one was aware of their arrival. Moreover, ordinary restaurants would not be able to enter their rating list at all. As for those that were on the list, no matter if it was a 1-star or the highest 5-star restaurant, they would all be proud of it. At the same time, they would also receive more attention and pursuit from the upper class. In the city of Zhongqing, a restaurant with a rating of 3 stars was already considered to be at the top level. Of course, their service was excellent. Murphy did not have to worry about paparazzi finding out that she was eating at this restaurant with her daughter. When they were eating Western food, Murphy showed her good upbringing. She used the knife and fork elegantly and helped Shishi cut the veal. Of course, Shishi preferred the macarons in this restaurant, so Murphy asked the waiter to serve the dessert in advance. However, Shishi only took 2 bites before she put down her fork. "Why do you look like you don't have any appetite today?" Murphy asked in surprise. "It's not as good as Papa's." Shishi pouted and said unhappily, "Shishi misses Papa." "It can't be. Could it be that your Papa can cook Western food?" Murphy asked in amusement. "Who said that?" She was not convinced. "Papa is amazing. It's delicious." Murphy was surprised. She asked, "What kind of Western food can he cook?" "Tell Mama." "A lot, such as this, and this, Papa has cooked them before. It's delicious." She could not name the name, but when Murphy saw that she was referring to the French onion soup and rosemary roasted lamb chop in front of her, Murphy did not believe it. Although Murphy did not know how to cook these 2 dishes, the process was obviously very troublesome. It was completely different from cooking Chinese food. Murphy was willing to believe that a stubborn guy like Yang Yi could cook Chinese food. But would he learn Western food, or even such a complicated French food? Murphy felt that the possibility was 0. But would he learn it for me? Murphy suddenly had an idea that shocked herself. How could it be? What if it was true? It couldn't be, right? I've never seen him do that before. But if it wasn't for me, why would he learn Western food? Who else likes Western food, and is worth it for him to change? Murphy was flustered by her own wild thoughts. It was only when the waiter came to serve the dishes that she hurriedly sorted out her thoughts. "You've been living in Papa's house for 2 weeks. Is there anything that makes you happy? Please share it with Mama." Mo Fei changed the topic. Cece's interest was piqued again. She said happily, "Yes. Papa took Shishi to see the flowers. And took a lot of photos." Murphy nodded. Yang Yi had sent her 2 selected photos. The sea of flowers behind she was very beautiful. It was so beautiful that she was mesmerized. She always felt that it was not enough to just look at the photos. In fact, she was a little jealous. Yang Yi did not take her there. He always took his daughter to play here and there. He never even thought of inviting her. Papa tied Shishi's hair and bought a lot of beautiful clothes. Shishi pouted and said, but Mom didn't bring them back for Shishi. Those clothes are with your papa. Mom will go on a business trip in a few days. You can still wear them when you live with papa. Murphy said, You're still talking about hair. If Mom didn't ask your papa to learn how to tie hair, he wouldn't even know how to do it. What kind of hair did he tie for you before? It's so ugly. Shishi thought of something. She giggled, and her bright eyes turned into 2 crescent moons. Papa, he couldn't learn it. It was Brother Kai's mom who taught him, and then Papa learned it. Brother Kai's mom? Murphy's expression stiffened. She narrowed her eyes and asked, Who is she? A woman who appeared around Yang-e. Murphy became vigilant. Brother Kai's mom. She said in confusion. Papa said she sells flowers. Mo Fei's face suddenly became cold, but the voice she used to talk to her daughter did not become cold. Really? How did your papa know her? One day, it was raining heavily. She had a good memory. She gestured with her small hands and said, Well, it was raining, and then? Papa and I were drawing downstairs. I drew a very beautiful elephant. Papa also said that it was good. Murphy held back and did not urge her again. Later, Brother Kai and his mom wanted to take shelter from the rain, but Brother Kai's mom's feet were dirty, so Papa asked her to go upstairs to wash her feet. Murphy's hand that was holding the fork tightened. She did not pay attention. She digressed a bit. Papa asked me to take a toy to play with Brother Kai, but Brother Kai ignored me at first. He was so fierce. Well, she even led her daughter away. Later, Brother Kai's mom's clothes were wet, so Papa gave her a piece of clothes to wear. She said innocently, But Mom, don't worry. The next day, Brother Kai's mom returned the clothes. Clothes were wet. She even gave someone else clothes to wear. She even returned it the next day. Mo Fei felt that her heart had become cold. She just wanted to sneer. So that was the case. No wonder she was indifferent. No wonder she did not care at all. Mom, what's wrong? Shi's voice seemed to drag Murphy back from the clouds. Murphy forced a smile and said, It's nothing, Mom, it's nothing. However, she was in a terrible mood. The tears in her eyes were rolling and could not be stopped. Murphy covered it up and took a big gulp of white wine. With the strength of the wine, she suppressed her rolling emotions. Mo Fei stretched out her hand on the table and held the little girl's little hand in her palm. She smiled a little firmly and said, In the future, no matter what, we won't be separated, okay? Yes. And Papa? She said innocently. Murphy could only chuckle. Chapter 61. It had to be said that habit was a terrifying force. Yang-e was no exception. After talking to Murphy on the phone for more than a week, Yang-e was used to picking up the phone at night and listening to her. However, after she came back, the things he had to do every night came to an abrupt end. When Yang-e typed on the keyboard every night, the phone on the side did not budge. Is this what disappointment feels like? Yang-e thought silently. Why do I have such emotions too? In fact, he was just an ordinary person. However, unlike Murphy's wild imagination, Yang-e found that he could not control the emotions that were growing wildly like grass. He chose to ignore it and stopped thinking about it. He threw it aside and put his energy into the matter at hand. He wanted to adapt drawing sword. However, the problem was that Yang-e counted on his fingers and waited for the new weekend, but she still did not arrive. Could it be that Murphy had not gone to promote it yet? Was she not going to release a new album soon? Yang-e waited until his new book was released. He did not pay much attention to the new book situation. When Murphy's new album was released the next day, he finally received a call from Shi. Papa, sob, you don't want Shi anymore. After the little girl picked up the phone, she complained with a sobbing tone. Huh? What? When did Papa say that he doesn't want Shi? Yang-e was confused. Yang-e struggled for a long time and learned the details from the aggrieved Shi. Murphy had already gone to Shanghai's TV station to hit the charts. During the month of the release of her new album, she had to broadcast music programs on Shanghai, Beijing, and other major TV stations. Although the chart could not determine the sales of her album, it could increase her popularity to a certain extent. If the results were good, naturally, more people would buy it. However, Murphy did not send Shi to Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not know that Murphy was angry with him. Murphy wondered why she should send Shi there. Did she want Shi to watch Yang Yi and his lover being lovey-dovey? Of course, the reason Murphy made up for Shi was, "Your papa is too busy. We can't disturb his work now. Shi misses papa so much. After papa finishes his work, he will play with Shi, okay?" The little girl sobbed and said, "Mom is not at home. Shi is afraid at night." Murphy had been on a business trip for a few days. She could not help but sneak into the living room and call her father's cell phone today. The little girl did not dare to disturb her father before. Yang Yi was actually full of anger. He did not know why Murphy would deceive Shi like this. He also did not understand why Murphy would rather leave Shi at home than send Shi to him. When was he busy with work? The most idle person in the world now was Yang Yi, okay? Yang Yi frowned and thought of Murphy's sudden disconnection. He could not help but think, what does she want to do? What kind of person does she think I am? That I can come and go as she pleases? Some of the inappropriate perceptions of his predecessor now emerged and began to affect his judgment. Did Murphy still think of him as a substitute doll when her daughter needed her father's company? In any case, Yang Yi was very angry. Why didn't she let him take care of her daughter? Obviously, even if Yang Yi had no experience, he would take care of her better than Murphy, who was busy all day and did not have time to accompany her daughter. "Papa, I want you to tell me a story," she said with grievance. Shi, don't be afraid. Dad will come to pick you up." Yang Yi suppressed the anger in his heart and comforted the little girl. "Go back to sleep and close your eyes. When you wake up tomorrow, you will be able to see Dad." "Really?" She asked with some surprise. "It's true," Yang Yi said resolutely. Did the seven dwarfs send Shi to Papa? She was still reluctant to put down the phone. She was full of joy and asked with fantasy. "Yes," Yang Yi said softly. After putting down the phone, Yang Yi was silent for a while. He glanced at Murphy's phone number in the call log, but after thinking about it, he still did not call her. Ask for help? Yang Yi could not do it. Moreover, he was more inclined to use his own way to solve the problem. What was Yang Yi's way? In the deep darkness of the night, Yang Yi's tyrant gradually revealed its figure from the dim street lights. Then, it silently turned into a secluded alley. "It's here, there's no mistake." Yang Yi turned on the car's light and looked at the map. When Murphy picked up Shi, she gave him her home address. Although there was no mobile phone map in this world, but who was Yang Yi? Did he need GPS to find the place? Putting away the map, Yang Yi unzipped his jacket, revealing the black tights inside. After putting away the things, he picked up a small satchel, turned off the light, opened the car door and walked out. Murphy lived in a high-end neighborhood with tight security. Naturally, there was also electronic access control. The security was easy to deal with. Yang Yi flipped over the wall at the end of the alley like a hawk. With his skill, the broken glass could not even touch his hair. However, the electronic access control was a bit troublesome. He did not have that much time and did not want to create more trouble and make the situation worse. So he let go of the confused security guards and climbed up from the sewer pipe and then went into the safety passage on the 4th floor. Murphy actually lived on the 30th floor. In order to avoid the surveillance camera in the elevator, Yang Yi walked up the stairs to the 30th floor from the safety passage. Luckily, Yang Yi's physical strength was different from ordinary people's, so he was able to stay calm and not be out of breath. When he arrived, there was only one house on this floor, so privacy was guaranteed and it was easy to find. Yang Yi moved the surveillance camera away. The next step was to unlock the door. Murphy's door lock was not ordinary, but Yang Yi was relieved that at least it was not an electronic lock. If it were a fingerprint or password lock, Yang Yi would need professional tools to crack it. At this time, where would he find professional tools? But as long as it was a lock that could be opened with a key, Yang Yi had a way. He took out a few iron wires from his satchel and poked at the door lock for a while. With a soft click, the door lock was opened. After putting away the iron wires, Yang Yi gently opened the door and tiptoed in. This was Murphy's house. Yang Yi saw Murphy's old boots in the shoe cabinet at the entrance, and his heart calmed down. If Murphy had given him the wrong address, he would have been caught in the dark. However, there was one more person that he had to deal with, and that was Murphy's housekeeper. Obviously, she should be sleeping in the housekeeper's room, but Yang Yi could not be careless. He sneaked into the housekeeper's room. The door was not closed, so he walked in and gently tapped the housekeeper's sleep acupuncture point. This way, he could ensure that she could sleep peacefully until the next morning. Chapter 62. After coming out of the housekeeper's room, Yang Yi finally had the time to look around Murphy's house. There was only one word to describe it: rich. Although it was only 100 square meters, Murphy's house was located in the coastal area, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Moreover, the decoration was also very luxurious. Not to mention the furniture, the walls and floor were decorated with top-grade ceramic tiles, Persian carpets, and special wooden lamps. For Shi, Murphy even removed the ceramic tiles in every corner of the house and replaced them with golden soft covers, which were similar to those found in clubs, but the materials used were more delicate. Similarly, all the furniture in the house didn't have sharp right angles. Even if there were, they were polished and wrapped with matching soft cushions. It could be said that there was no blind spot for Shi. From these details, Yang Yi seemed to feel Murphy's deep concern for her daughter. It was a love without any impurities. Yang Yi found Shi's room, and this feeling was even clearer. The little girl's room was simply made into a fantasy castle by Murphy. The wallpaper on all four sides, the cartoon-shaped cabinets, and the corners full of toys and dolls. This was probably the fairy tale world that every child dreamed of, right? She was wearing cartoon pajamas and sleeping sweetly on the bed. Yang Yi sat down beside his daughter and saw the smile on her face. He didn't know if she was so happy because she saw her father in her dream. However, when he was ready to take Shi away, Yang Yi was a little hesitant. If Murphy heard the housekeeper say that her daughter was missing tomorrow, what kind of blow would it be? Although Yang Yi was very unhappy with Murphy's unpredictable mood, he didn't deny Murphy's love for Shi. Obviously, she had sacrificed a lot more than Yang Yi. However, would such love be good without companionship? Moreover, Yang Yi had promised Shi that she would see her father when she woke up tomorrow. Yang Yi's gaze became resolute. He gently lifted Shi up. The little fellow, who was sleeping soundly, wrinkled her little nose, but still curled up in her father's chest and fell into a deep sleep. Yang Yi first used Shi's small quilt to wrap her up. Then, he took out a nylon strap from his small satchel and fastened Shi to his chest. Before leaving, Yang Yi wrote a note. "I'm Shi's father. Tell Murphy that I've brought Shi back. Don't panic." He pasted the note on the door. In this way, when the nanny woke up tomorrow and found that Shi was gone, she would see the note. After doing this, Yang Yi went back along the way. Even though he was holding Shi in his arms, he was able to get back to the car smoothly with his ability to leap over roofs and vault over walls. The next day, a ray of sunlight shone into the bedroom and made the big bed warm. The little beauty, who was sleeping on the bed, frowned. Her long eyelashes trembled, but she didn't wake up so soon. She just turned over and faced the sun with her little butt. However, before long, as if a thought was calling in her heart, she turned around and slowly opened her hazy eyes. However, at this time, Yang Yi was preparing breakfast for Shi in the kitchen. He didn't know that Shi would get up so early. "Papa." The little girl, who was wearing a nightgown and had fluffy hair, opened the bedroom door and walked out while rubbing her eyes. Yang Yi heard the noise in the kitchen. He stuck his head out and said with a smile, Good morning, Shishi. Shishi hadn't been so confused yet. She looked at her father in a daze. After a long time, she remembered the current situation. The little girl, who came back to her senses, suddenly became excited. She ran barefoot to her father and said, "Papa, I missed you so much." Yang Yi was worried that Shishi, who didn't wear slippers, would fall. He quickly threw down the spatula, strode forward, and picked up Shishi. "Papa." After being picked up by her father, Shishi hugged her father's neck and refused to let go. "I missed you so much." "Papa missed you too." Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's little head lovingly. He first carried her back to turn off the gas stove. Yang Yi washed his daughter's face and combed her hair. Shishi finally came out of her confused state. She asked curiously, "Papa, did the dwarfs really send Shishi to Papa?" "Yes." After Papa received a call from Shishi, he said to the dwarfs, "Kind and lovely dwarfs, can you send Shishi to my house? She misses Papa." Then, in the middle of the night, the dwarfs sent you here. Yang Yi smiled and made up a story according to Shishi's imagination. "But why didn't Papa wake Shishi up? Shishi has never seen a dwarf." Shishi pouted and said, "That's because the dwarfs are very shy. They didn't want to be seen by others, so they left after sending Shishi here." Yang Yi tried to lie. "If they saw us, the dwarfs wouldn't help us next time." Shishi hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Then Shishi shouldn't see us. Next time, Shishi will need the dwarf's help." When Shishi was happily having breakfast with her father, Murphy's call came as scheduled. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment, but still pressed the answer button in front of Shishi. "Yang Yi, tell me quickly that Shishi is with you." Murphy's voice was trembling with panic, and she even sounded like she was about to cry. She didn't know where her usual calmness had gone. "Don't get excited. I did bring Shishi back." Yang Yi sighed in his heart and said calmly, "I don't believe it. Let Shishi talk to me." Murphy was almost choked with sobs. Yang Yi had to hand the phone to Shishi. After the little girl took the phone and heard her mom's voice, she said happily, "Mom, I'm having breakfast with Papa. It's the dwarf who sent Shishi to Papa. Shishi is so happy." "Mom, what's wrong with you? Don't worry about Shishi. Papa is here." After a while, the phone returned to Yang Yi's hand. Murphy gnashed her teeth and said, "Yang Yi, what kind of bastard things have you done?" This time, Murphy really couldn't bear it. She was already furious. Yang Yi avoided Shishi, took the phone, went to the balcony, and said calmly, "Shishi called me and said she missed me. You know what you're doing is illegal. Do you know?" Murphy was a little hysterical. "Why don't you let me take care of Shishi when you're on a business trip? Why do you leave her at home with a stranger?" Yang Yi asked. Because. Murphy couldn't go on. Her self-esteem didn't allow her to make a scene with a jealous woman. "Anyway, Shishi can't be with you." "Am I not good enough for Shishi?" Yang Yi asked. "Why do you care so much about Shishi being with me?" Murphy didn't want to go on. When she thought of Yang Yi being with another woman, her heart was full of sadness. "I still have something to do. Tomorrow, no, I'll come back right away." With that, Murphy hung up the phone. Yang Yi was left standing there in confusion. It seemed that the storm had subsided for the time being. Chapter 63. Murphy's situation wasn't very good. Yesterday, when her new album was released, she participated in the recording of a music chart program at Shanghai TV station and a live broadcast recording at Shanghai radio station. She was busy until late at night. However, sometimes hard work doesn't bring the rewards you want. For example, album sales. Early in the morning, Murphy, who didn't sleep for many hours, woke up. Her lips were pale as she couldn't wait to ask Mo Xiaowan, who was holding the phone, "Is there data? How much?" Mo Xiaowan hesitated for a moment, but still told Murphy the situation, 26,000. This was the latest data obtained by the company through the Copyright Association. Generally, This data would be delayed for a few hours before it would be published on the Copyright Association's website. 26,000. Murphy was stunned, and her cold eyes also showed a sad look. The first day sales exceeded 10,000. If it was in Yang Yi's previous life, this sales volume would be enough to write a special book, and even reaching the standard of a platinum album by the end of the sales period could be expected. But it has to be known that copyright protection in this world is the best, and people's consciousness of supporting authentic records is also unprecedentedly strong. So in this world, the standard of a platinum album in the Mandarin region isn't 1 million, nor is it 10 million, but a jaw-dropping 20 million. But even so, there are still 1 or 2 platinum albums emerging in the country every year, which shows how popular the record market is. However, now it seems that this honor has nothing to do with Murphy. The first day sales were only more than 20,000, and it wasn't the first time Murphy released an album. She knew that this time, she was afraid that she would encounter a Waterloo. Sister Ling said, "Don't be discouraged, it's just the beginning, we still have a chance." Mo Xiaowan encouraged her. But Murphy could only smile bitterly. Indeed, it's not like there are no stories of early slumps and later comebacks by word of mouth, but Murphy is different this time. She still knows that the quality of her new album is just passable. The only thing she can play is the emotional card. It could be said that the sales volume on the first day could almost reflect the effect of her emotional card. Most of her hardcore fans who were willing to support her would choose to buy on this day, right? However, misfortunes never came singly. Just as Murphy was feeling down, she received a call from the housekeeper. The housekeeper was worried sick and frantically told her that she was missing. At that time, Murphy felt as if she had been struck by lightning and almost fainted. Fortunately, it was really Yang Yi, that bastard, who took she over. Although Murphy couldn't figure out how Yang Yi did it, it wasn't important. More importantly, she was still safe. However, with her emotions fluctuating so violently, Murphy was no longer in the mood to record the show. She hurriedly instructed Mo Xiaowan to help her smooth things over and arrange the follow-up matters. Then, she asked the driver to drive her to Zhongqing. "Wait a minute, my sister, are you crazy?" Mo Xiaowan was still desperately holding on to her. "Why are you throwing a tantrum at us at this time? Do you know how serious the consequences would be if you stood someone up tonight? Don't tell me you've forgotten about Lu Shifeng?" Murphy stopped in her tracks. Lu Shifeng's slander had a great impact on her. How could Murphy not remember? Wasn't the reason why she agreed to the company's arrangement of so many schedules to eliminate the influence of the one-sided public opinion? However, if Murphy gave in, she wouldn't be the same Murphy who chose to leave the entertainment industry for her child. "Help me apologize to the television station and the director. See if they can be reconciled until tomorrow," Murphy said in a low voice. "Tomorrow? You still have a schedule at Beijing TV station tomorrow." Mo Xiaowan said anxiously. "Then think of a way to help me explain." Murphy looked tired. All she could think about now was she. If she didn't see she with her own eyes, she might not be able to feel at ease. The car left, leaving Mo Xiaowan in a mess in the exhaust. She wanted to cry but had no tears. How did I get such a bad sister? The first day sales of Murphy's new album were terrible. Yang Yi had no way of knowing about this situation. However, what he could know was that the new book he released the day before, Drawing Sword, was very popular from the beginning. There was no slow burn. The first chapter was a hearty battle. The protagonist, Li Yunlong, used his farmer-like cunning to wipe out the Yamazaki Brigade, which was defending the position and causing huge casualties to China's troops. However, a big victory was just a high point. What made the readers intoxicated was the process. Not long after the release, Mu Yuqing, who claimed to be a hardcore fan of Yang Yi, couldn't wait to comment on his book. Yang Yi is still Yang Yi, but the protagonist is more interesting. The title was in front, and the text was at the back. The website has never announced Yang Da's identity, but one thing is without doubt. Yang Da must be from a rural background and has been a soldier. In his works, we can see the simplicity of China's farmers, such as Su Sanduo in Soldier's Assault. We can also see their unique cunning, such as Li Yunlong in Drawing Sword. Li Yunlong was a regiment commander, but he didn't look like a general. Instead, he looked like the vulgar and uncultured little farmers we usually know. Looking at his conversation with the cook, old Wang, he glared and said, "Dream on. You can use the knife, but what can I use? Go, go, go. Kitchen knife, spoon. If you can't use it, use the shoulder pole and think of a way yourself." Later, after Li Yunlong won a big victory, he was not complacent. Instead, he was angry that the soldiers beat Captain Yamazaki into a sieve and that he couldn't duel with the other party. Which son of AB*TCH killed Yamazaki? Stand up for me. Just like that, an illiterate farmer became our main character. Yet, just like Su Sanduo, it wasn't surprising at all. In fact, I admired his personality. We all know that in the first half of the last century, our country fell into enemy hands, domestic warlords divided, and there were external and internal problems. At this time, it was a group of farmers and students who came from humble backgrounds who stood up and twisted the power of the country into a rope. That was how we defeated the enemy and led our current life. Yang Yi's book is as exquisite as ever, and the story is as fascinating as ever. I'm really curious how this vulgar Li Yunlong will lead his troops to deal with the Japanese invaders in the future, and how he will bring endless trouble to the enemy. The first chapter made me fall in love with this book, but unfortunately, there's no more. Yang Yi, you be *starred, hurry up and update it. Like Mu Yuqing, there were many fans who could not wait to finish the first chapter of Drawing Sword and express their joy. The newly opened book review section suddenly became very lively. Needless to say, Drawing Sword was on fire. According to the editor, Changzi, who could not wait to report the good news, the number of subscriptions on the first day Yang Yi's new book was released exceeded 1 million. The unit price of subscriptions in this world was very low, so don't be too surprised, and daily sales also exceeded 10,000. Although this was not a record-breaking figure, it was still far from breaking records due to the limitations of the subject matter. However, this was still the best military literature column in recent years. What's more, Yang Yi's books had never won by sales. According to Changzi's statistics, the amount of rewards on the day of release had exceeded 1 million. According to their agreement, Yang Yi could get at least 700,000. However, Yang Yi did not care at all. He was not ecstatic, nor did he celebrate. It was as if this was just a small scene. For now, Yang Yi had the same idea as Murphy. Putting everything else aside, the most important thing was to take care of Shi. Chapter 64. Murphy had set off early in the morning. It only took her a few hours to get back to Zhongqing. She sent away the nanny van and put on her sunglasses, mask, and hat before taking a taxi to Zhongqing Media University. However, she only appeared outside Yang Yi's coffee shop when it was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There weren't any customers. Murphy stood at the door. She hesitated for a moment and didn't push the door open. Through the glass, she saw Yang Yi playing with Shi inside. Yang Yi seemed to be juggling. He held a few small balls and tossed them one by one. Then, he caught them and tossed them again. The small balls formed a circle in the air. Shi was so excited that she giggled. Of course, the soundproofing effect of the glass was good. Murphy couldn't hear Shi's laughter. However, how could Murphy not know how happy she was when she saw the little girl dancing with joy? Will Cici be happier when she's with her father? A thought suddenly appeared in Murphy's mind. She was originally very aggressive and wanted to denounce Shan Liangchuan, but she suddenly felt depressed. She didn't know why, but she retracted her hand from the door handle and wanted to turn around and leave. Of course, she wasn't giving up on her daughter. However, Murphy understood that she couldn't be too selfish. She couldn't let Shi be with her father just because of a little jealousy. Moreover, she couldn't accompany her daughter at this time. Although she was a little sad, Murphy still made a choice. However, just as Murphy was about to turn around and leave, Yang Yi seemed to sense something. He looked up and happened to meet Murphy's eyes. All right, this time, Murphy couldn't leave. You rushed back from Modu? Yang Yi went over personally, opened the door, and called Murphy in. He was a little surprised. "I told you not to worry. She is with me. She's very safe." Murphy's face was cold. She ignored Yong-yi. "Mom. She misses you too." The little girl hugged her mother's leg happily and said happily. She wouldn't think about why her mother would suddenly appear. Anyway, she was so happy to have her mother and father by her side at this time. Seeing her daughter, a smile appeared on Murphy's face. She picked up Shi and kissed the little girl's smooth little face. Then she complained in a low voice, "You came to your papa's side and scared Mom to death." "Mom, don't be angry. It was the dwarf who sent Shi here. Shi saw Papa after sleeping." Shi tried to explain. "Mom, don't blame the dwarf." "And what dwarfs?" Mo Fei glared at Yong-yi grumpily. How could she not know? It was definitely Yong-yi's trick. He even tricked Shi. Yong-yi was a little nervous. He was originally confident, but in front of Murphy, he felt a sense of guilt. It was even deeper than the guilt brought to him by the 2 million yuan. After a while, Shi twisted in Murphy's arms. She couldn't sit still. Murphy and Yong-yi looked at each other across the bar. No one knew what to say. The atmosphere was very awkward. Yong-yi wiped the table carelessly. Finally, he thought of something. "I'll make coffee for you. These days, I finally bought authentic Blue Mountain coffee beans." Murphy put Shi down and let her play by herself. She opened her red lips and said, "I don't drink coffee." Yong-yi had to stop what he was doing. He didn't know what to do. Murphy didn't know why, but she felt a little wronged in her heart. She pursed her lips and said in a weak voice, "I'm hungry." She was indeed hungry. She came back in a hurry. She hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch. Yong-yi suddenly understood. He quickly said, "Then let's go up. I'll make you something to eat." Hearing this, Shi ran to the front happily and shouted, "I want to eat too. I want to eat too." Yong-yi took off the apron and folded it neatly. Then, he took the key and walked out. But when he looked back, he saw that Murphy was still sitting there in a daze. "Let's go," Yong-yi said softly. He was a little soft-hearted. Murphy curled her lips and stood up bashfully. But she arranged her face and looked indifferent. She followed behind Yong-yi and said lightly, "Who knows if your cooking is good or not? I'm a little worried. Maybe it's better to find a restaurant outside." "No, Papa's cooking is delicious." She ran back and touched her little belly to Mom. She said innocently, "Shi's belly is big now." Murphy's mouth twitched. She was actually amused by the little girl, but she had to maintain her cold attitude in front of Yong-yi. So, she didn't forgive him. So, it took her a lot of effort to hold back her laughter. Yong-yi didn't argue with Murphy. He liked to prove it with actions. At this time, Chinese food was obviously not suitable because the cooking speed was too slow. After Yong-yi returned to the kitchen, he took out a handful of pasta from the cabinet. Then, he took out the beef tenderloin, tomatoes, green peppers, onions and other vegetables that he wanted to cook tonight from the fridge. It was not difficult to cook the pasta. The process was basically the same. But the difficult part was to control the heat, and the time and quantity of seasonings. But these were not difficult for Yong-yi. He was agile. Soon, a large plate of black pepper beef pasta was out of the pot. Yong-yi knew that Shi also wanted to eat, so he gave a small plate to the little girl. In the process of cooking the pasta, Yong-yi also made use of every second to peel the apple, cut the cherry tomatoes, peeled the kiwi, bananas and so on, and made a plate of fruit salad. Yong-yi took out 3 plates on a tray. Then, he smiled and put the large plate of pasta in front of Murphy and the small plate of pasta in front of Shi. Forks and chopsticks were prepared for them. "This is yours, this is Shi's, and the fruit salad. Welcome to taste. Is it really made by him?" Murphy looked at Yong-yi's dishes in a daze. For a moment, she forgot to move. It was not that Murphy did not like it, but Yong-yi did it too well. Not to mention the fragrance, The plate arrangement was very particular. The pasta on the clean white porcelain plate was not spread out. Instead, it was placed in the middle of the plate, like a small mountain. Yong-yi, on the other hand, had placed a small flower carved and inlaid with apple peel on the edge of the plate in a very showy manner. This was almost comparable to the work of the chefs in the high-end Western restaurants. Eat quickly. It won't taste good if it gets cold. Yang-yi was a little confused and reminded. Of course, it was delicious. Shi, who was next to them, was holding a small fork. She was already eating loudly, and her face was covered with some meat sauce. Murphy came back to her senses. She looked deeply at Yang-yi with a puzzled look in her eyes. But she still picked up the fork and ate. A goddess was a goddess. Although the first bite was very good, so good that she almost bit her tongue, she still maintained her elegance and slowly tasted it. Chapter 65. The spaghetti was cooked just right. It was neither soft nor hard, but it was chewy. The gravy of the black pepper beef fillet also soaked every noodle. With just one bite, the aroma of the meat overflowed and the taste buds exploded. Delicious! These words were shouted out by Shi. The little girl's table manners were not as good as Mom's, and she was completely unaware that the spaghetti had thrown a piece of meat sauce on her forehead. Murphy was very reserved. Although it was delicious, she still maintained an elegant posture. She just glanced at Yang-yi in surprise, then held her hair, lowered her head, and slowly tasted it. Yang-yi couldn't help but laugh. He went to get a towel and helped the little girl wipe her face. He also said softly, "Don't worry, no one will snatch it from you. Look at you, you've eaten so much that you look like a big dirty cat. Quick. She couldn't help but twist her little butt. She couldn't wait to continue eating. Murphy looked at the interaction between the father and daughter, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. This kind of warm feeling was like a cloud, lingering in her heart. After Murphy finished eating slowly, Yang-yi pushed the fruit salad forward and asked with a smile, "How is it? Not bad, right?" Yang-yi was still very confident in his cooking skills. Mo Fei rolled her eyes at Yang-yi. The eyes of the ice goddess could be said to have melted the ice and melted the snow, turning purple and red. It was extremely charming. But Murphy didn't want to praise him, so as to avoid Yang-yi, this guy, being cocky. However, Murphy still couldn't help but ask in her heart, "Where did you learn to cook Western food?" Yang-yi had long known that Murphy would ask this question sooner or later, so he had already prepared an answer. He said calmly, "Haven't I traveled extensively for many years, and worked as a security guard and a waiter? I secretly learned it from a chef in a hotel." Murphy didn't have enough life experience, so she didn't know that this reason was actually nonsense. How could cooking be learned by secretly learning? She was naive enough to believe it. At the same time, Mo Fei also felt sympathy for Yang-yi. She inexplicably felt the hardships that Yang-yi had gone through all these years. She almost shed tears. She muttered slightly in a low voice, "Then why didn't you come to me?" "What?" Yang-yi was helping Shi clean up the mess. The little girl ate so much that the noodles were thrown on the table. "Nothing." In order to hide her emotions, Mo Fei pretended to be unhappy and asked, "Why haven't you cooked for me before?" Speaking of this, Murphy felt wronged. Yang-yi was stunned for a moment. A sense of irritation arose in his heart. This was an emotion that originated from the memories of his predecessor. "You haven't even stayed here for a whole day." "No, not even half a day. What chance did I have to cook for you?" In the end, Yang left, little Yang, Li, and little Nor. "I'm very busy." Murphy pursed her lips and didn't know how to respond. In fact, she didn't dislike Yang-yi, and it wasn't that she didn't have time to get along with Yang-yi before, but the previous Yang-yi had a very bad temper. That kind of feeling of three different views. Murphy felt that she would suffocate if she stayed with the previous Yang-yi for a while. Now, for some reason, Yang-yi had changed a lot. Although his temper was still a little bad, he actually did a lot of things that he wouldn't touch before, such as Western food, coffee, and these foreign foods, Yang Yi was very old-fashioned and thought that they were spiritual opium. The current Yang Yi, Murphy felt much more comfortable to get along with. Since you learned how to cook, why didn't you open your own restaurant? Murphy didn't want to talk about emotional topics, so she changed the topic. Yang Yi frowned and said, I don't like to be a chef. I want to cook because I want to live a more exciting life. He glanced at Shi and added, moreover, I only want to cook for myself, or for the people I care about. Well, that little fatty who shamelessly came up to her didn't count. At most, he would eat Shi's leftovers. Hearing Yang Yi's confession, in Murphy's opinion, Murphy's heart was about to be melted by Yang Yi. But suddenly, she remembered something that she had been brooding about before. Oh, really? You cooked for that Xiao Kai's mom? Murphy couldn't control the sourness in her heart at this time and blurted it out. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment, and he said frankly, No. What do you mean no? I didn't cook for her. Yang Yi was telling the truth. But you've already brought her to your home. You even gave her clothes to wear. Murphy's grievance exploded. She felt that if she didn't say it out, she would die of suffocation. Shi, who was eating fruit at the side, thought that her mother was unhappy because of the clothes. She quickly took her mother's hand and comforted her, Mom, don't be angry. Xiao Kai's mom returned Papa's clothes. But how could Murphy be angry because of a piece of clothes? She stubbornly looked at Yang Yi, wanting Yang Yi to give her an explanation. But Yang Yi felt that there was nothing to explain, and said lightly, her feet were dirty, and there was no place to wash in the bathroom downstairs, so she came upstairs to use the bathroom. Of course, this explanation was not enough. Murphy turned her head and argued with Yang Yi. Yang Yi had never dealt with this kind of emotional problem, so he didn't know what to do. On the other hand, Shi stepped on the chair, raised her butt, and leaned on the table to eat fruit. She unintentionally muttered, but Xiao Kai doesn't like to play with Shi, so he doesn't come. Murphy pricked up her ears. This was something that Murphy hadn't heard before. Yang Yi also nodded and said with a smile, maybe his mother doesn't have time. She has to manage her family's flower shop, and your Xiao Kai has to learn piano. After the day he returned the clothes, he didn't come again. Hearing this, Murphy felt as if a stone had been lifted from her heart, but she still couldn't help but ask, he didn't come again? Well, I also wanted to say that she can have one more good friend, but it's a pity. Yang Yi shook his head. Murphy pursed her lips and said, you still want to have contact with that woman? It's not her. I just think that if she can have one more playmate, she won't be too lonely. Yang Yi said, but it doesn't matter. Now there are many teachers' children in the school, and they often play on the lawn in front of the economic management building. Next evening, you can consider taking Shi to meet other children. It turned out that they had only met twice. Murphy's mood suddenly brightened. She was so happy that she didn't pay attention to Yang Yi's words. Her appetite was also better, and she fought with Shi to eat the fruit salad. However, there was still a problem. What about the clothes you put on her that day? Murphy pretended to be indifferent and asked. Yang Yi was puzzled. What do you want to do? I want to wear it too. I rushed back today, and I'm wearing these clothes. It's so hot. Murphy said stubbornly. Then I'll get you a new one, or I'll take you to buy clothes. Are you sure you want to wear men's clothes? Yang Yi said with a headache. No, I want to wear it, and I want to wear that one. Murphy pouted and said. But I threw it away. Yang Yi said honestly. Threw it away? Why? Murphy didn't believe him. Because I don't like to wear clothes that others have worn before. Yang Yi said concisely. Murphy still didn't believe him, but Yang Yi really said the truth. He was such a clean freak. How could he wear clothes that others have worn before? The day Yen Xiaopei returned the clothes, Yang Yi turned his head and threw it into the trash can. I'll take you to buy clothes. I don't want to. Then I'll get you a new one. No. I'm not hot anymore, and the clothes I'm wearing now are very comfortable. Umph. Chapter 66. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, Murphy did not mention anything about bringing Shishi back. However, she did not stay with Yang-yi for long. Not long after, Murphy received a call from Sister Ling. Sister Ling was so angry that her voice trembled as she scolded Murphy. Do you think you can squander your talent just because you have talent? Do you think you can come and go as you please in this entertainment industry? Look at your current results. Wake up. You're no longer the queen of music from 4 or 5 years ago. If you don't work hard, you'll really be suppressed by those newcomers. You'll never be able to make a comeback. Do you know who you've offended by quitting this program? Just Lu Shifeng alone can make you so miserable. What's more, this time it's Shanghai TV station. After offending Shanghai TV station, do you still want to stay in the entertainment industry in the future? I don't care what happened to you, Murphy. I don't care where you are now. Hurry up and go back to record the program. I've already told Mo Shaowan not to tell the TV station. Hurry up and go back now. Otherwise, Murphy, don't come to see me. Sister Ling was really angry this time. Murphy was scolded to the point that she did not have a chance to explain. Her mood, which had just cleared up, was now clouded over again. Yang-yi heard the commotion and roughly understood the situation. He frowned and asked, "You left your job and came back?" Murphy nodded her head in grievance and did not say a word. Yang-yi didn't really care if he worked or not. It was just like opening a shop. He could choose to keep it open all day, or he could close the door at will and accompany his daughter or go out for a stroll. However, this job seemed to be very important to Murphy. After Yang-yi learned to think for others, he understood this point. Murphy cared so much about her records. If she lost her job, there might be a big problem. Does it affect you a lot? Yang-yi asked. Murphy nodded silently. Let's go back now, Yang-yi said. Shishi, don't worry. I'll take good care of her for you. How can I make it back in time? The show starts recording at 8 o'clock, and it's almost 4 o'clock now. How can I make it back to Shanghai? Murphy said. I still have to find my driver. I don't know how long that will take. Of course, the fastest way was to take a plane. However, when taking a plane, one still had to consider the flight schedule. The time spent in the middle was not necessarily less than driving. After all, Magic City and Rivertown were near each other. Yang-yi stood up with a bang. He picked up the key and said, "There are still 4 hours left." It was more than enough. "Come, I'll drive you to Shanghai." "I want to go too." She wants to go too." The little girl was playing with her toys, and her ears were like automatic alarms. When she heard the keywords, she jumped up happily and ran over. Of course, she is going too. Yang-yi smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. Daddy doesn't dare to leave you alone at home. We can't make it back in time. Murphy was very doubtful. However, Yang-yi took her hand, pulled her downstairs, and stuffed her into the car. Although the process was very short, Murphy's ears were red. This seemed to be the first time they held hands, right? This time, Yang-yi placed Shi and Murphy in the back seat. For this arrangement, he also removed the safety seat and reinstalled it in the back. Then, he firmly fastened Shi with the seat belt. "I want to sit in the front and enjoy the scenery," the little girl said with a pout. However, Yang-yi did not pay attention to her. After he finished all this, he did not forget to remind Murphy, "Fasten the seat belt." "The back seat also needs to be fastened?" Murphy did not understand, but she still obeyed. Soon, Murphy understood why Yang-yi said so. This guy was already very familiar with the roads in Zhongqing. After a few turns, he directly went on the Ring Highway. He was ready to bypass the bustling city area and take the Jianghu Expressway to Shanghai. After getting on the highway, Yang-yi began to speed up. 100, 120. The speed was close to the limit of the highway. If it were not for Shi and Murphy sitting in the back seat, for safety reasons and out of consideration for their acceptance, Yang-yi could have directly sped up to 200 kilometers per hour. Slow down, slow down. Murphy was a little nervous, especially when she saw Yang Yi overtaking without slowing down. She was so nervous that her hands were sweating. Ha ha, ha ha. It's so fun. However, she showed a different reaction. The little girl waved her little hands and was excited by the feeling of being driven at lightning speed. Close your eyes and sleep. There's a quilt behind you, Yang Yi said without turning his head. Rest your mind. You still have to record the show tonight. So fierce. Murphy muttered in her heart. She wrinkled her nose and made a face at Yang Yi's back. Then, she obediently hugged the quilt and went to sleep. She was really tired. She did not sleep for many hours yesterday. When she got up early in the morning, she suffered a blow from the Waterloo sails. Then, she was worried about Shi's sudden disappearance. Later, on the way back to Zhongqing, she was not in the mood to close her eyes and rest. Her mind was full of all kinds of ties with Yang Yi. Fortunately, she got the answer she wanted. Then, it felt so good to be cared for like this. In this kind of sweetness that she had never felt before, Murphy gradually fell asleep. Actually, she did not sleep well in the car. Yang Yi's tyrant was good in everything, but the shock absorption was a little bad. She did not know if it was because the military car did not consider shock absorption at all in the past. Murphy was in a daze as she swayed, but she could still hear the conversation between Yang Yi and Shi clearly. Wow, Papa, look there are so many boats. Because we're crossing the river. Papa, those cars can't catch up with us. I'm so happy. Then, Papa is driving so fast. Are you afraid? I'm not afraid. She is not a child anymore. Haha, who told you that you're not a child? Mom said it. Mom said that she has grown up. She has to be good and not disturb Papa. Okay, don't listen to your mother's nonsense. In the future, when you're not at Papa's house, call me if you miss me, okay? Okay. Papa, can you open the window? Why? Because the window is covered, I can't see clearly. Not now. Why? Because your mother is sleeping. She, you have to be quiet. Don't disturb your mother. It's very hard on her. Okay, shoo. Unknowingly, the car stopped. Murphy, we're here. Yang Yi turned his head and shook Murphy awake. Murphy woke up in a daze and saw the Shanghai TV station not far away. She murmured, Ah? We're here so soon? What time is it? It's still early. Fortunately, we didn't disappoint you. We're almost an hour early. Yang Yi smiled slightly. Along the way, Yang Yi drove like a speeding car. In 3 hours, he drove nearly 300 kilometers and overtook all the cars in Shanghai. He was lucky that no traffic police stopped him. Murphy didn't rush to get out of the car. She called Mo Xiaowan first. Sister, you're back? When Mo Xiaowan saw Murphy, she almost cried with joy. However, when she saw Yang Yi in the car, she was shocked and looked at Yang Yi and Murphy with a strange expression. Do you want me to wait for you? Yang Yi ignored her and said to Murphy. Murphy gently shook her head and said in an unusually soft voice, No, you can go back first, or take Shi to play in Shanghai for a day or two. I'm in a hurry. After recording the show, I have to catch a plane to Beijing. Mo Xiaowan nodded and added, Yes, I've already booked the plane tickets. Okay, then I'll take Shi back first after dinner. It's still early. Yang Yi didn't mind. Hee, we're going for a ride again. She was addicted to sitting in the car and shouted happily. No. Murphy said unhappily. You're not in a hurry. You're not allowed to drive so fast. Safety first. Mo Xiaowan looked at their faces with a strange expression. A bunch of gossip was brewing in her heart. What happened to them today? Why did they suddenly get better? No, she had to ask them clearly later. Chapter 67. Before they knew it, Drawing Sword had been updated for a week. Although Yang Yi updated once a day, the speed was much slower than the previous Soldier's Assault, which caused the readers to complain wildly. Even so, they continued to complain while reading in a daze. However, after the 7th chapter was released yesterday, Yang Yi aroused public anger. F***ck, did he really write sister-in-law Xiuqin to death? Great author, do you have a conscience? The first 7 chapters of the novel killed the female lead. It's over. A good book turned into poisonous grass, the extremely poisonous kind. Abandon the book. F***ck, I'm so angry. A good female lead was killed by a cannon. Can't you save her? In fact, these were really the curses of true fans who expected better from Yang Yi. At present, Yang Yi had gathered the power of fans and many paid posters dared not come forward. There were also emotional people who said, although I had a hunch after seeing Xiuqin get caught, I can't believe that you, the author, would do such a thing. It took me a whole day to get this chapter out. Even a 1.8-meter-tall man like me is crying. It's so uncomfortable. Didn't the monk kneel down and beg you to give him 10 minutes? If he rushed in with his men, he might have been able to save her. Bastard, why didn't you give Xiuqin a chance to live? Li Yunlong did the right thing. As a soldier, he can't let go of the Japanese special forces because of his love. He can't forget to avenge his brothers who died on the mountain because of his love. That's why he ordered the cannon to fire. I respect him as a man and a qualified general. Finally, someone stood up and said something fair for Yang Yi. Li Yunlong sat down weakly. His mind went blank, and he felt weak all over. This sentence made me cry. Since she's the woman you love so much, why can't you save her? Li Yunlong, you're a coward. It had to be said that this chapter was indeed poisonous. More than 90% of the readers found it hard to accept this fact. Especially the original readers of the Chinese website. These web novel readers scolded Yang Yi even more fiercely. Even the hardcore fan, Mu Yuqing, couldn't help but ridicule Yang Yi. You bastard, are all the female protagonists in your works worthless? Soldier doesn't have a female lead, and Drawing Sword's female lead has only appeared for a few chapters. They've just gotten married, and you're already letting her get a bento? After all, everyone was used to the plot of web novels. No matter how the main character started, whether it was Zhao Riqian or an ordinary mortal, he could become an omnipotent Superman in the end. Regardless of whether there was 1, 2, or many female leads, the male lead would be able to take care of them all and then start a huge harem. If someone dared to write that the male lead was incompetent and caused the female lead to suffer even the slightest bit of harm, the male chauvinistic readers would scold that person to death. However, Yang Yi did just that. Not only did he hurt the female lead, but he also made the male lead ruthlessly blast his own woman and the Japanese to death with a cannon. Was he not courting death? Was he not trying to poison his own readers? Was he not trying to drive his readers away? The editors of the Iron Army website, who had been paying close attention to Drawing Sword's developments, were delighted to see this scene. After all, the release of Drawing Sword had indeed caused a great crisis for them. Hu Da's move was ingenious, and it happened to be right at their throats. It was not some underhanded conspiracy. He was clearly trying to pit Yang Yi's book against the Iron Army website. He was blatantly attracting the readers of the Iron Army website, and the Iron Army website could do nothing about it. Now, the old readers of the Iron Army website were in such a situation. They chose to read Yang Yi's book at Chiue, and then spent money to reward him. However, they would continue to read at the Iron Army website. The only difference was that their consumption had been greatly reduced. This could be seen from the back-end data. Although the Iron Army website believed in its own foundation and appeal, and believed that the readers would not abandon the Iron Army website, the income that originally belonged to them was divided up by Chiue. No one would be willing to accept that. But what could they do about it? The editors of the Iron Army website had thought of poaching Yang Yi. During the serialization of Soldier's Assault, a large number of Iron Army readers left messages asking them to poach Yang Yi. They had seriously considered this issue. Poaching Yang Yi was obviously beneficial. But Chiue had done a good job of keeping it a secret, at least from their point of view. The author's information was not leaked at all, and the author himself did not interact with the book fans in the book review section. Actually, if Chiyue knew about this, they would definitely cry foul. After they signed a long-term contract with Yang Yi, not only did they not intend to hide it, they even wanted to publicize it and make Yang Yi a new great author. However, Yang Yi refused. Not only did he not want them to expose his personal information, but he was also not interested in participating in a written interview on the website. This greatly disappointed the staff of the publicity department of Chiyue, and the readers kept calling for him, but they did not get a response. Of course, there was another way, and that was to get Yang Yi's contact information from the Copyright Association, but this would undoubtedly require a lot of favors. The management staff of the website did not have the ability to do so, unless they begged the Army Journal behind it. However, the bosses of the Iron Army website felt that it was making a mountain out of a molehill, so they gave up on this idea. But how were they going to poach him? Waving Ho Si-gu was at a loss. They could only watch as Drawing Sword's results exploded, but there was nothing they could do, of course. Now that Drawing Sword had dug a hole for itself, the editorial department of the Iron Army website was cheering and celebrating with smiles on their faces. However, it seemed that this celebration came too early. After the 8th and 9th chapters were released one after another, the editors of the Iron Army website were surprised to find that the readers who were originally clamoring to abandon the book did not abandon the book. Instead, they were cursing and subscribing to the new chapters. Of course, the new 2 chapters caused a great deal of controversy. Yang Yi, that guy, wrote the death of the monk after the death of the heroine. Although the monk was only a supporting character and was only Li Yunlong's bodyguard, his powerful martial arts and righteous character had earned him a lot of fans. But how could such a character of flesh and blood die in vain? Moreover, he did not die at the hands of the ferocious Japanese, but at the hands of bandits, Chinese. The hearts of the readers were bleeding. They did not blame Li Yunlong. Li Yunlong had done well enough. Not only did he disregard discipline and lead his men to eliminate the bandits to avenge the monk, but he also committed the highly controversial killing of prisoners. The readers still loved Li Yunlong to the core, but they also hated Yang Yi to the core. How could he write the monk's death? Chapter 68. Although the book review section was filled with criticism, what made the editors of Iron Military uncomfortable was that the results of Drawing Sword were increasing instead of decreasing. The more it was criticized, the more popular its sales were. Boss, did Chiyue do something to it? A new editor said indignantly. A group of people said they were going to abandon the book, so why are there still so many people subscribing? This doesn't make sense. The deputy editor of Iron Military, Ling Yun Juejian, was indeed a balding middle-aged man. He pushed his gold-rimmed glasses up and did not say a word. However, the chief editor next to him was already speaking up for him. Fishball, what nonsense are you talking about? How can Chiyue tamper with this kind of big data? Don't tell me they're directly giving money to fill the number of subscriptions? Of course, that was impossible. The fiercer the criticism, the more you can see the reader's fondness for Drawing Sword. Ling Yun Juejian sighed and said, "It's just like those tragic dramas. The more people cry, the more the market." He took the mouse and clicked on the reward section. He pointed to the projection and said to his subordinates, "Look, he wrote the supporting characters to death, but there are still many people who are willing to support him. They're even willing to spend a lot of money to get him to revise the previous chapters." The most extravagant was the Golden Alliance of Drawing Sword. A reader with the ID military number urges me to report, spent a huge reward of 50 million book coins, equivalent to 500,000 yuan, just to leave a message in red. There's still 50 million left. Yang Yi, if you change Xiuqin and the monk back, it's yours. If you don't change it, I'll send 100 teddy bears to your house one day. P.S. The joke about sending teddy bears came from the book review section. A book friend said that if Little Frost gets this book, he'll send Tai Ri Tian to Little Frost. Doraemon is scared. The editors of Iron Military were no strangers to this ID. They knew that this person's true identity was a real estate owner who used to be a soldier. After retiring, He started from scratch and was a big boss who was worth hundreds of millions. In the past, he spent no less than 5 million on Iron Military. He was a big fish that even Iron Military had to take care of carefully. However, now that he had gone to another platform and was still tipping the authors of the other platform, the editors of the Iron Army Network were heartbroken. I think it's better if we poach Yang Yi over at all costs. The meeting room was silent for a while. Then, one of the chief editors said, "What kind of conditions did Chi-Yu offer him?" "We'll give him something better and give him a signing fee. But the problem is, we don't even know where they are. How are we going to poach them?" Another chief editor retorted. "If we could, we would have done so long ago. Ling Yun, why don't we discuss this with the military's literature department?" "That's right. With the help of the Army's literature and arts department, wouldn't everything be fine by now?" Ling Yun frowned as he listened to the commotion in the conference room. He laughed bitterly in his heart. Too naive. Was it so easy to order those people in the army? Moreover, the relationship between the Iron Military, and the Army's literature and arts department had been strained recently. Due to the decline of traditional media, the Army's literature and arts department had been declining year by year. On the other hand, the Iron Military, had shown great potential for growth. This made Ling Yun a little unhappy. Every time the leaders of both sides met for a meeting, there would be a smell of gunpowder. "Ahem, I think we don't have to go through the Army's literature and arts department." A weak voice entered Ling Yun's ears. Ling Yun's eyes lit up. He pointed at the guy and said, "Fishball, what good idea do you have? Hurry up and tell me." That's right, it was the brash new editor. When he saw that the deputy chief editor had called him out, he mustered up his courage and stood up. He said loudly, "We can ask a good publisher to talk to Chi-Yu about the physical publication of Soldier's Assault. For such an important matter, Chi-Yu would definitely give us the author's information, right? As long as we can get in touch with the author, our chance will come." "That's right." Ling Yun patted his bald head and laughed. "Fishball, that's a good idea. Very good, very good. Let's do it this way. You, go and make the arrangements." Yang Yi had no idea what the editors of the Iron Military were up to. Yang Yi had been informed by the editor, Chong Zi, about his new book, but he did not look at the reviews and comment section. He also had no intention of changing the manuscript. Yes, a reward of $500,000 was not enough to change the plot of the original novel. Why? Yang Yi's reward for a mission in his previous life was a few $1,000,000. How could a mere 500,000 be enough to make him go away? Furthermore, no amount of money would work. Yang Yi was a man of principles. But, what was he doing? Today, Yang Yi did not open his shop. Instead, he brought Shi to the bank. Of course, Yang Yi did not have the attributes of Detective Conan. He was just there to withdraw money. The bank was peaceful. There were no bank robberies or kidnappings. As they had made an appointment beforehand, the VIP manager brought Yang Yi and Shi to a separate VIP room. She was very considerate and gave Shi a plate of candies and biscuits. "Thank you, Auntie," Shi said sweetly as she snuggled into her father's arms. "You have to call me sister. Calling me Auntie is too old." The VIP manager, who was wearing a suit and a skirt, was actually only a few years younger than Yang Yi. However, it was a woman's nature to dislike being called Auntie. Back to the topic, the VIP manager confirmed with Yang Yi, "Mr. Yang Yi, are you going to withdraw $1 million in cash?" "That's right." Yang Yi nodded. "But it's not convenient to carry $1 million in cash around. It's also not safe." Sure enough, Tianxia Bank was just as evil. She tried her best to persuade him to stay. "Why don't you deposit your money in the bank? We have a very convenient wealth management product here. Your money can be withdrawn as soon as you deposit it. The interest rate is higher than a current account and the income is calculated daily." Yang Yi was very firm. He waited for the VIP manager to catch her breath and expressed his attitude. "No, I want to withdraw cash." The VIP manager tried her best, but Yang Yi still wanted to withdraw the money. In the end, she could only ask the security guard to send the money up. Yang Yi prepared his own luggage to withdraw the money. Seeing Yang Yi put the stacks of money into the bag, the VIP manager's heart was bleeding. She could not help but say, "Mr. Yang, it's not safe to carry so much money on the road." Yang Yi smiled faintly. He looked at her calmly and said, "Is it? Thank you for your reminder. Let's go, Shishi." The little girl reluctantly looked at the untouched candy on the plate, but she still obediently jumped down from the chair and ran over to her father's empty left hand. "Goodbye, Auntie," Shishi said obediently. The VIP manager's mouth twitched when she heard that. She could only force a smile. Just like how he didn't care when he bought a car with $2 million, Yang Yi carried the bag of money and calmly walked out with Shishi. It was as if they were a father and daughter traveling with their luggage. No one would look at him. Yang Yi was still looking forward to it, but there were no blind robbers rushing out. So he threw the money into the back seat of Tyrannical Wolf and left with Shishi. Chapter 69. Modified version. When he got home, Yang Yi waited for Shishi to go to bed before he took the money in the 2 luggage bags to the study. The money that Yang Yi had withdrawn from the bank that day was in the gray luggage bag. It was his income from the book Soldier's Assault last month. The other dark green duffel bag contained the reward he received for reporting the corrupt official. Of course, it was no longer 2 million. Yang Yi had bought the car, renovated the coffee shop, and other expenses. He had spent more than 800,000, close to 900,000. That was quite a lot. Luckily, Yang Yi easily got it back. He opened the dark green luggage bag and took out the scattered money. Then, he took out the money from the gray luggage bag and placed it neatly into the dark green luggage bag. He counted until the money in the dark green luggage bag reached 2 million. There was still 122,700 left in the gray luggage bag. Yang Yi took it out and placed it neatly in the drawer in his study for his daily use. Yang Yi liked to keep a large amount of cash at home. On one hand, it was because the concept of mobile payment didn't exist in this world. On the other hand, it was because of his habit from his previous life. He could take the money and run away any time. Even though he didn't need to do that now, Yang Yi still lacked a sense of security. Speaking of which, after Yang Yi tidied up the dark green luggage bag, he finally let out a sigh of relief. Back then, when he took the 2 million from the corrupt official Luo Jinrong's vault, Yang Yi thought that he could take it with a clear conscience, just like in his previous life, and leave with his reward. However, under Mo Fei's interrogation, Yang Yi found that although he had deceived her by making up a lie, there was a heavy shackle on his heart. It turned out that there were so many restrictions in the world of ordinary people. Yang Yi gradually distinguished the conflict between his previous life and his current life. Take the reward, for example. Yang Yi might have thought of it as a reward for his efforts, but to ordinary people, the money was ill-gotten wealth. How could the corrupt officials take the wealth of the people and use it for themselves? Carrying out justice on behalf of the heavens, and you still want to steal while you're at it? Then what right do you have to say that you're walking on the path of justice? If he had even deceived his own daughter's mother, how could he use this money with a clear conscience? Since he had decided to completely integrate into the world of ordinary people, Yang Yi was also slowly changing his mindset. Although it was impossible for Murphy to discover the existence of the money, Yang Yi felt that if he didn't handle it properly, there would always be a demon in his heart. How could this be? Yang Yi wanted to live a carefree life. Therefore, after he received the copyright income last month, Yang Yi took back the money that really belonged to him and made up for the hole that he originally took out. The only thing left was how to deal with the 2 million. Fortunately, Yang Yi already had a plan. After 2 weeks of hitting the charts with her new song, Murphy could finally come back and rest for a few days. Although these few days weren't completely a rest, she still had to participate in some programs in Jiangqing. Murphy still wanted Yang Yi to send Shishi home. She missed her daughter. When Yang Yi saw Murphy, she still looked cold, but in front of Yang Yi, she didn't hide it. Her eyes were still full of fatigue and loneliness. I saw it in the newspaper, Yang Yi hesitated and said, the situation of your new album isn't very good. Murphy was hugging Shi. The mother and daughter were interacting intimately. When she heard Yang Yi's words, Murphy pursed her lips and said stiffly, let's not talk about this. Although her relationship with Yang Yi had eased, Murphy's understanding of Yang Yi was still in the past. She felt that Yang Yi was still very dissatisfied with her work in the entertainment industry. Therefore, if she could avoid talking about this with Yang Yi, she didn't want to talk about it. What's more, Murphy had been beaten black and blue by the poor sales of her album in the past 2 weeks. Home seemed to be her only safe haven. Why would she involve those troubles? Murphy's tone was still very uncomfortable, but Yang Yi was still not angry. He still felt that Murphy's situation was very bad, but the problem wasn't with Murphy herself. It was just that the songs in her new album were too bad. If he were to write songs for Murphy, with Murphy's ability, it wouldn't be impossible for her to return to the top. What's more, he could sell songs to an unfamiliar singer like Chen Yijie. How could he just stand by and watch Murphy be depressed? She is Shi's mother. Yang Yi muttered to himself for a moment and said, I think that I might be able to help you. Murphy was a little unhappy. She interrupted Yang Yi and said irritably, no need. You stay at home and take care of Shi. Let me deal with the problems in my career, okay? Choking for a moment, Yang Yi swallowed back the words of wanting to help her write a song. Seriously. A dog biting Lu Dongbin, she doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. Yang Yi was also a guy with strong self-esteem. He didn't want to shamelessly stick to other people's cold buttocks. Murphy looked at Yang Yi and didn't say anything. She was actually a little flustered in her heart. Of course, Murphy didn't know what she missed out on, but she didn't know why, but she inexplicably cared about Yang Yi's feelings. Would he be angry? Sigh, did I lose my temper again just now? Mo Fei started to blame herself. However, even so, with her cold personality, it was difficult for her to take the initiative to apologize to Yang Yi. Murphy's idea was also very strange. If he wasn't willing to give in on the issue that she insisted on, then she could just compensate him in other areas. The two of them seemed to have parted on bad terms this time. After sending Shi to Murphy's place, Yang Yi could be said to have a few days of vacation. He followed his plan and threw the dark green luggage bag into the car. Then, he took some simple clothes and drove all the way west to a relatively poor western province. You are Zhu Luyan? Yang Yi met with the person he contacted earlier. Zhu Luyan, this was the founder of a non-governmental charity organization. Although he looked dark and thin and dressed like a migrant worker, Yang Yi still knew that this guy's background wasn't small. He was born in a big family in the capital, a rich family. But because Zhu Luyan's relationship was strongly interfered with by his family, he angrily left the capital and left his original pride and status. Of course, Zhu Luyan still hoped to make some achievements to prove himself, so he chose to do charity with his girlfriend. Moreover, he was very creative and established a project called Dream Primary School. Through donations, they were dedicated to building well-equipped schools in poor areas to help those children realize their dreams. Of course, they had only built 3 schools so far. After all, the donations weren't much. Most of the money came from Zhu Luyan selling his luxury car. He wasn't willing to use his family's connections to trick others into donating money. Before this, Yang Yi had done a detailed investigation and even borrowed the dark power of this world. Therefore, he was still very assured about Zhu Luyan's project. It just so happened that his 2 million yuan could be used appropriately, and Yang Yi didn't have to worry too much. After Zhu Luyan and Yang Yi confirmed each other's identity, he carried the dark green luggage bag that Yang Yi gave him. He was so excited that he trembled a little. He said, Mr. Yang Yi, your 2 million yuan is really timely. Moreover, we can let 2 more children in poor areas have a place to study. Zhu Luyan's excitement, of course, wasn't because he had never seen so much money before, but because it was the first time he received such a large donation. Moreover, it came at such a timely time, so he didn't need to ask his family for help. He regained the confidence to do a good job in charity. Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, "Mr. Zhu, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask." "Go ahead. I'm just suggesting a little. The name of your project, Dream Primary School, sounds weird. Would it be better to call it Hope Primary School?" Chapter 70. In the blink of an eye, it was July. Zhu Luyan seemed to have found a like-minded comrade. She took him to visit the schools he had built before and asked him to give his opinion. Yang Yi came back a little late. There was no problem with Murphy. They parted on bad terms that day, but it didn't affect their conversation every night. The content of this call was a little strange. The two of them didn't talk about their relationship, nor did they talk about love. They just talked about Cici day after day. If she was with Yang Yi, Murphy would ask Yang Yi to report the interesting things about her daughter that day. If she went back to live with her mother, Murphy would also tell Yang Yi about she. This kind of talk on the phone was really magical, but what was more magical was that Yang Yi enjoyed the process. After hanging up the phone, Murphy would secretly feel sweet for a while, as if Yang Yi had said something sweet. Of course not. How could a wooden person like Yang Yi say something sweet? When Yang Yi came back, the editor, Chong Zi, was the happiest. "My lord, you are finally back." Chong Zi received Yang Yi's reply on SNS and almost cried with joy. Yang Yi was a little puzzled. "I stopped updating?" "No, there are still some manuscripts in the draft box." "Then my readers fell out again." "Well, there are some." After the new heroine appeared, the readers were a little angry, but the situation is still manageable. This matter started last week. Under the joint counterattack of the two military forces in China and some small warlords, the Japanese invaders were finally defeated. They were even driven out of the country and chased back to their home island. In the end, the Japanese invaders surrendered unconditionally. This history was somewhat similar to Yang Yi's previous life, but it was more about the pride of the Chinese army, and the European and American armies didn't get involved. After the victory, it was bound to be the beginning of the Civil War. In the joint battle, the strength of the small warlords was almost exhausted, and the rest was the confrontation between the two military forces. In fact, history had changed a lot, but it was surprisingly similar. After Yang Yi made some artistic modifications, the trajectory of the story returned to the original plot. Li Yunlong's military force, which was based on workers and farmers, and Chu Yunfei's military force, which was backed by entrepreneurs and bankers, began to fight in the vast land of China. Li Yunlong's name was unknown, but he showed cunning and tenacious fighting power, which gave his opponents a headache. Just like his military force, although it looked very primitive, it was strong enough to make all the people who looked down on it slap themselves in the face. But fate was so strange. Li Yunlong and Chu Yunfei, these two people who appreciated each other but had to be wary of each other, met again. Once, they were both regimental commanders. Because of his temper, Li Yunlong killed prisoners, disobeyed orders, got promoted, got demoted, and stayed in the position of regimental commander. Even though the army he led was already an independent brigade, and during the battle, it was expanded to a division. In the original novel, Li Yunlong was promoted to a division commander, but the title of regimental commander was still deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Chu Yunfei was much better. He was talented, and he was more tactful than Li Yunlong. Naturally, he had a meteoric rise, and he had already reached the rank of Major General. Of course, they also led a division. The two characters that the readers loved so much were destined to have a battle of life and death. But how could they guess Yang Yi's plan? At the end of the 12th chapter, Chu Yunfei ordered his subordinates to shoot at Li Yunlong, and Li Yunlong also ordered his machine gunners to shoot at Chu Yunfei. At that time, the readers' hearts were broken. Fortunately, in the end, Li Yunlong was pulled back from the edge of death by the hospital. He was wrapped like a dumpling, and he was in a coma for 8 days before he woke up. The overjoyed readers seemed to empathize with Li Yunlong's subordinates. "Listen, if anything happens to our division commander, I'll kill you first, and then the doctor. Do you understand?" There would always be a delicate girl next to a reckless man. This time, when Li Yunlong was injured, a little nurse, Tian Yu, appeared next to him. She looked like she came out of a painting. When Zhao Gang, the literary political commissar, saw her, he thought of the poem Hibiscus Like a Face, Willow Like Eyebrows, in the Song of Everlasting Regret. It could be seen how delicate her beauty was. But the readers didn't accept her because she was beautiful. It was amazing. Originally, in the world of online novels, the male version was basically the world of male chauvinists. Most readers couldn't wait for the male protagonist to have all the beautiful women in his pocket. But in this book, there was a call to not welcome Tian Yu's character in the book review section. It was almost a one-sided rejection. Perhaps it was because Xiu Qin was too deeply rooted in people's hearts. Shouldn't the strong woman who was still stubborn and willing to sacrifice for her man be the perfect match for a man like Li Yunlong? Why did another vixen get into his mind so quickly after his wife died? Of course, the plot in the book actually jumped a long time. The readers saw this development in a few days and didn't realize that in fact, Xiu Qin had been gone for many years. In the next few chapters, the attitude of the readers quietly changed. Because of each other, the two characters who seemed to be completely incompatible with each other had a chemical change that made the readers unhappy but couldn't help but laugh. Tian Yu, who was originally from a scholarly family, had a chivalrous heart. Not only did she carefully take care of Li Yunlong, but she also had a deep understanding of him. She could also understand Li Yunlong's past. She even tried to argue with her colleagues about the fact that Li Yunlong killed his wife with the Japanese. And Li Yunlong also changed from a rough man to a rough man with a playful heart. He tried his best to recite poems with Tian Yu. He was also angry that the hospital changed the nurse for him, so he played petty tricks and asked Tian Yu to transfer him back. This kind of disparity gradually made people feel that the two of them were actually quite compatible. Finally, Li Yunlong went to the Tian family's house to propose. Although there were still some readers who were unconvinced, most of them had already accepted the arrangement of the story. No, it seemed that they had gone a little too far. Back to the conversation between Yang Yi and Chongzi, Yang Yi asked in confusion, "Then what are you in such a hurry for?" Chongzi quickly said, "There's a problem with the physical publication of Soldier Assault. Didn't your contract say that you have to be involved to talk about the copyright? Now several publishers have come to your door, and there's even someone who wants to sign 2 of your books in one go." Well, he did have some foresight after all. Drawing Sword was not even halfway through its serialization, yet he could already see the potential of Drawing Sword. Of course, Chi Yu wanted to strike while the iron was hot and fight for more benefits, but Yang Yi wasn't there at all. "I understand." Yang Yi pondered for a moment and said, "Ask them to come over to my place to talk. Let's do it next week. I'll basically be in the shop next week." "Okay, I'll arrange it right away. My colleagues from Chi Yu's copyright department will also accompany you." Chongzi responded quickly. The happy Chongzi certainly did not see it through the screen. Yang Yi's lips also curled into a slightly deep smile. Chapter 71. Shi, wake up. It's time for breakfast. Auntie Zhu was the nanny who woke Shi up this morning. Shi rubbed her eyes and leaned on Auntie Zhu's shoulder. She hadn't woken up yet. The little girl's voice was also drowsy as she asked, "Where's Mom?" "I want Mom." Mom went to work. But Mom said that she has to stay at home obediently." Auntie Zhu was already used to it and comforted her skillfully. She doesn't want to be obedient. She wants Mom." She mumbled. Of course, she was just venting a little when she woke up. She was already used to her mother not being by her side, so she was very obedient and didn't cry or cause trouble for Auntie Zhu. Auntie Zhu was quite responsible for taking care of she washing her face and taking care of she's breakfast. However, she couldn't be as meticulous as a real parent. When she was feeding she porridge, she still turned on the TV and focused on it. "I want to eat sandwiches and drink juice." She grabbed her little feet and protested. The little girl was unbridled when Murphy wasn't by her side. Usually, She was focused on cultivating Murphy into a little lady. She wouldn't allow She to play with her feet with her hands. Dad seemed to allow it, but Yang would definitely ask She to wash her hands. Auntie will buy you sandwiches tomorrow. There's juice in the fridge. Drink it after you finish the porridge. Auntie Zhu stuffed another spoonful of porridge into her mouth. She's mouth was stuffed with porridge. She swallowed it uncomfortably before she had the chance to continue speaking. No, I want to eat the delicious sandwiches that Dad makes and drink juice made from oranges. You still have to eat well. Auntie Zhu didn't care. She continued watching the TV and said, You have to eat well to eat a lot of delicious food. What kind of logic was this? She couldn't understand. When she was at her father's place, sandwiches were rice. Moreover, when they were eating together, her father would make a lot of delicious food. The picky little girl felt that she had no appetite for the food she ate at home. However, before she could throw a tantrum and protest, Aunt Zhu suddenly said, She, look, it's your mother. She's attention was immediately attracted. She widened her eyes and focused on the television because her mother really did appear on the television. Last month, the former pop queen Murphy came back and released her new album, 9 Years of Murphy. However, the current market performance is relatively low. Some experts have analyzed that the reason for Murphy's predicament is that the quality of her works has greatly decreased after her comeback, which is really disappointing. The video shown on TV was a clip of Mo Fei's participation in a music program. However, this news was still connected to the so-called expert and music critic. That person said, a month ago, I had already expected that the results of Mo Fei's new album would not be much better. Why? First, her new album was too rushed. From the news of her comeback to the announcement of her new album, only a few months have passed? Any outstanding album needs the singer to carefully polish it. If the album is not made with effort, how can it sell well? Here, I have to mention Lee Man. Now, Lee Man's status in the music industry is not lower than Murphy's before she retired. However, Lee Man still spent a long time perfecting her music. I believe that the new album that she promised to release in January next year will definitely sell well. As I said earlier, this is only one of the reasons. There is another reason. It's just that I don't think Mo Fei's character is good. Previously, teacher Lu Shifeng openly criticized her on the show. Later, many musicians in the industry also expressed a lot of opinions. Of course, they didn't make it public. The reason why I know is that I'm familiar with them. Her character is not good, and she has offended many people. Murphy wants to easily return to the peak after her comeback. How is this possible? If she can still become popular, wouldn't it be unfair to other hardworking children, such as Lee Man? This guy said a lot, but he always had a feeling that he was stepping on Murphy and flattering Lee Man. In fact, he received money from Lee Man. Only a small TV station that Aunt Zhu liked to watch every day would invite such a person to spout nonsense. Aunt Zhu, of course, still stood on Murphy's side. She said angrily, This person is talking nonsense. When did your mother not work hard? I feel distressed. She is such a good daughter. She practices singing every day and works hard. How can you say that she is not hardworking? She was actually confused when she heard that person's words. As a child, how could she understand so many words? At most, she felt that this person was not saying anything good. But after listening to Aunt Zhu, the little girl said angrily, My mom is not hardworking. Mom is very powerful. She seemed to equate hardworking with being powerful. Sigh. Aunt Zhu sighed, but your mother is in a bad situation now. The news said that she released a new album, but the results are very bad. Mom won't. She was stunned. She felt a little wronged. She rubbed her eyes and refuted. Aunt Zhu didn't pay attention. She was still watching the TV. She casually said, It is very bad. The album sold very little. Some people said that they don't want it even if they give it to others for free. That's not it. She's big eyes were full of tears. She choked and said, She couldn't accept the fact that her most admired mom was not good. "Aya, my little ancestor, why are you crying?" Aunt Zhu noticed at this moment. She quickly put down the bowl and hugged Shi. She coaxed, "Do you want to drink juice? Aunt will get it for you now." "Oh." She shook her head and sobbed, "I don't want juice. I want Mom." "Aya, where can you find your mother at this time? Your mother is working hard. Otherwise, how can she have the money to buy Shi nice clothes?" Aunt Zhu said. "Then Shi doesn't want nice clothes. She wants Mom." The little girl thought for a moment and added, "Papa has money. I'll ask Papa to give Mom money." This seemed like a good idea. Your father's money is your father's money. Why would your mother want your father's money? Aunt Zhu's attitude was actually similar to Mo Xiaojuan's. She felt sorry for Murphy and was a little disgusted with Yang Yi. She snorted and said. However, she didn't listen. She felt that she seemed to have found a very good idea. "I'll find a chance to tell Papa and ask him to help Mama." She was happy. She missed her father a little. What Mo Fei didn't know was that her daughter's amazing way of thinking had actually helped her a lot. Of course, this was all in the future. Right now, Murphy had unknowingly been set up by someone to cause trouble. Chapter 72. P.S. Everyone is still wondering if the protagonist will write a song for Murphy and when. Don't worry, he will definitely write it, but it won't be the first album, nor will it be these chapters. After all, Murphy's new album is still on the charts. Even if he starts preparing for the new album, he still needs a buffer. Little Han likes to write different routines from other novels. Even if it's writing songs, or the upcoming scandal, the development of the story will definitely be different from what you think. If it's like other novels with all kinds of routines and all kinds of dazzling light, then what's the point? So calm down and watch the development of the story. Anyway, Little Han won't write a tragedy. Everything is for a better future. Sister Murphy, please wait a moment. Just as she came out of her recording studio, Murphy was stopped by someone. Looking back, it was a handsome male star. His hair was fixed with a lot of gel, and the fixed hairstyle was stiff and straight, but it also lost its original elegance. "Zhu Jie, what's the matter?" Of course, Murphy recognized this person, although she wasn't very familiar with him. In the past, when Murphy was still the #1 star, Zhu Jie was the company's trainee and was unknown. However, Zhu Jie had been a newcomer in the company for the past 2 years. His current development was good, and he had already entered the ranks of the C-list male stars. He had also released a good album, and his prospects were considerable. Murphy had a deeper impression of last month's company meeting, when Sister Ling asked Murphy to take care of Zhu Jie. However, Murphy wasn't the kind of star who was good at dealing with people. Her connections were shallow, and she was currently in a difficult situation, so when it came to supporting the younger generation, she was powerless. When she saw Zhu Jie, Murphy still felt apologetic, and it was rare that she didn't put on a cold look. "It's like this, Sister Murphy, you are my senior and have participated in many activities, so you have a lot of experience. Right now, the company is sending me to attend an award ceremony hosted by Southern Media. I would like to ask you about some things that I should pay attention to." Zhu Jie's eyes flashed with an inexplicable light as he deliberately got closer. Murphy furrowed her brows slightly. She wasn't used to this kind of intimacy, but because she felt apologetic, she didn't want to appear too distant. So, she held back her discomfort and said, "You need a date for the award ceremony." Zhu Jie seemed to be listening obediently, but in reality, he was paying attention to the other side from the corner of his eye. When he saw a hand gesture, the corners of his mouth curled up. "Sister Murphy, I know you're busy. Why don't we talk while we walk? I'll help you carry your bag." Zhu Jie eagerly extended his hand, seemingly a little flustered, and just happened to place it on Murphy's slender hand. Murphy reflexively retracted her hand with her brows knitted. However, she still held back her anger and did not flare up. "It's fine, Zhu Jie. Ju Jie brilliantly retracted his hand. He was also thick-skinned as he chuckled. "I'm sorry, Sister Murphy. I was too eager to show off, so please forgive me for my rudeness." Since the other party had already apologized, how could Murphy still put on airs? She forced a smile that was so fake that even she felt uncomfortable. "It's fine. Where were we?" Murphy really did have something on, so the two of them switched to walking and talking. Murphy wasn't used to Ju Jie's cologne, so she wrinkled her nose and took a few steps forward. But Murphy didn't notice that when she was trying her best to impart her experience to the other party, Ju Jie wasn't listening seriously. He pretended to walk steadily, but his right arm was raised and placed behind Murphy's back. "It's roughly like this. Do you remember it all?" Murphy still said a lot seriously before turning her head to look at Ju Jie. Ju Jie had already pulled his hand back as if nothing had happened. He scratched his head to cover it up and smiled flatteringly. "I remember, Sister Murphy. You're really amazing. Thank you for your help. Why don't I treat you to a meal tonight?" Murphy of course shook her head. She felt uncomfortable being so close to this Ju Jie. She didn't know why, but there was a strong sense of repulsion in her heart. "It's fine. I still have something on tonight," Murphy said coldly. This was Murphy's style of euphemism. Ju Jie smiled brightly. He didn't continue to pester her. Anyway, today's harvest was enough. Murphy actually didn't have anything to do in the evening. She just had to send Shi to her father's place. Starting tomorrow, she would fly all over the world again. In the last week of the new album promotion period, the company arranged a lot of itineraries for her. Of course, Murphy also missed the delicious food made by Yang Yi. In comparison, Murphy preferred to eat at Yang Yi's place. It was quiet, peaceful and delicious. Who would want to eat with a young man who sprayed cologne? Murphy was very stubborn. She didn't want to pretend to be polite. If someone says goodbye at the terminal station, there will be news of reunion. If at the terminal station, "I think you will meet again one day." Yang Yi crossed his hands and sat at his bar with his eyes closed. He quietly listened to the popular old song, The Terminal. It was indeed an old song. It had the charm of the slow-paced songs of the 1970s in his previous life. He needed to close his eyes and enjoy it carefully. It was also played with this kind of surround high-fidelity sound equipment, which always made people feel peaceful. However, a series of ringtones broke the peace. Yang Yi frowned. However, when he saw that it was Murphy's call, he quickly stopped the music and answered the phone. "Papa." Shi's crisp voice came out. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile. "Well, Papa is here. She is coming to Papa's place." "Papa, are you very happy?" The little girl giggled. She began to take the initiative and asked about her father. "Of course I am happy." "And Mama?" She giggled. "Mom said she wants to eat Papa's cooking. She wants to eat with she and Papa." Yang Yi also heard that Murphy seemed to have been exposed. She shouted angrily, "Yang Yi, that's no problem. Papa will prepare delicious food for you." Yang Yi said softly, "Okay." She cheered happily. The little girl chatted with her father for a while before Murphy grabbed the phone. She was a little embarrassed and pretended to be indifferent. "Don't listen to she's nonsense. I'll bring her here now. You don't need to pick her up. Shaowan happens to be free. Please take care of she. I have to go on a business trip tomorrow. Well, as for dinner, if you still have food in the fridge, I can eat some. If it's not convenient, I'll treat you to dinner outside at a hotel." Murphy pretended to be casual and said, "It's a meal for you. We don't owe each other anything." Yang Yi was actually a little unhappy with Murphy's attitude. If it was someone else, he wouldn't be interested. But after all, it was Murphy. Yang Yi didn't care. He also pretended to be casual and said, "Why go to a hotel? Can those chefs cook better than me? Anyway, I'm used to cooking for one more person. Since you're here, I won't waste it. Let's see who is more casual and who doesn't care more." Murphy gritted her teeth and said snappily, "That's not enough. Shaowan is also here." Mo Shaowan was driving. When she heard this, she quickly said, "No, sister. I have something to do later. There's a dinner party. I don't need to go." Of course, she was lying. In fact, she was unwilling. Last time in Shanghai, Mo Shaowan could see that the relationship between these two guys had eased. Instead of going up and watching the two of them being lovey-dovey and being abused, she might as well go for a ride. Maybe she could meet a handsome guy on campus. Chapter 73. Since Murphy was coming, Yang Yi was not in the mood to open the restaurant. Anyway, there were only a few customers a day. Therefore, he took off the sign early, closed the door, and went upstairs. Yang Yi knew that Murphy had been so busy these 2 months that she did not eat regularly, so her appetite was not very good. Therefore, he did not intend to prepare a few dishes casually. When Murphy and she arrived home, Yang Yi was wearing an apron and carrying a spatula in the kitchen. "Where's Shaowan?" Yang Yi asked in surprise. Murphy curled her lips and said unhappily, "Just us? Do you think that everyone is willing to appreciate your cooking? Shaowan has an appointment. I don't know which handsome guy stole her heart." This woman, when facing Yang Yi, seemed to gradually put down the defenses in her heart. Her every frown and smile was full of charm, and she was no longer like before when she had an ice-cold expression on her face every day. "Papa, it smells so good." She could not wait to take off her small leather boots and walk in front of him in slippers. She went to the second floor and sniffed like a puppy. Her eyes were shining as she said, "Is it time for dinner?" Yang Yi took Murphy's bag and walked to the back. He smiled and said, "Not yet. We have to wait. The delicious food needs to wait for a while more." However, a few minutes after Yang Yi went into the kitchen, he came out again, holding a plate of strawberries with frost. Murphy and she were very hungry when they saw the bright red strawberries. However, the middle of the strawberries was hollowed out. They did not know what white thing was inside, so they were very curious. "What is this?" Murphy could not help but ask. "This is called condensed milk strawberry ice." Yang Yi smiled and said, "I specially choose this kind of big strawberry, cut off the stalk, hollowed out the middle, and then poured condensed milk into it. Finally, I put it in the refrigerator to freeze it. It's completely natural and handmade. You can try it first." After Yang Yi put down the plate, he went back to the kitchen. However, behind him, the two guys, one big and one small, already couldn't wait to eat. It's so cold." His voice was muffled. "Yummy, yummy." Cece gasped for air, but she still cried out happily, "It's sweet and sour." Mo Fei's voice was as happy as a child who had not grown up yet. Yang Yi, who was cooking in the kitchen, could not help but smile when he heard something. Finally, it was time to eat. Just when Mo Fei and Cece were looking at the dishes on the table longingly, Yang Yi served them the porridge that he had carefully cooked. "What is this?" Murphy reacted, looking at the soft porridge, and the colorful yellow, black, light red and other ingredients, and asked with some confusion. "This is mixed grain porridge." Yang Yi introduced, "It's pumpkin, black beans, glutinous rice, millet and peanuts. Then it's boiled until it's soft and melts in the mouth. It's very good for the stomach." She couldn't wait to secretly take a small spoon and eat a small bite, just in time to eat her favorite peanuts. The little girl blinked her big eyes and said happily, "Delicious." She. "You can't be so rude. Wait for your father to sit down, then we can start eating." Murphy, who attached great importance to etiquette, immediately scolded with a stern face. She could only obediently put her 2 small hands on her knees and sit properly. But there was a smile in her eyes, and she even stuck out her little tongue at her father, as if secretly complaining to her father about her mother's strictness. Yang Yi smiled carelessly and continued to explain, but he was concise and comprehensive, because she couldn't help but want to eat quickly. The theme of today's meal is to eat well. To eat well, one must first have an appetite. In that case, I have no choice but to recommend this plate of sweet and sour squid. It's a replica of sweet and sour pork, but the base ingredient is squid, which is more elastic and chewy. This is vegetarian tofu. Although it looks no different from ordinary tofu, it's stuffed with carrots and chopped shiitake mushrooms. This is Shi's favorite soda chicken wings, similar to cola chicken wings, but called cola chicken wings for the sake of differentiation. It's just lightly fried in oil, so it won't be very hot. This is... Finally, Yang Yi finished, and the queen nodded in satisfaction. She waved her chopsticks and ordered confidently, "Let's eat." She was already swallowing her saliva. Hearing this, she happily grabbed the small spoon and ate the porridge with relish. Delicious. It's sweet. She likes it so much. She said vaguely, probably because she ate the pumpkin. It's better than Auntie's. Murphy said somewhat sternly, "Don't talk when eating, Yang Shi. How many times do you want Mom to say it?" Yang Yi picked up a piece of cola chicken wing for his daughter and put it on the small plate in front of her. He advised, "It's okay, it's just eating, what's the problem with talking?" Of course it's the problem, she is a girl, how can she be like those men, spitting saliva and talking while eating? Murphy was unhappy when she heard this. She put down her chopsticks and argued seriously. Well, if they quarreled, they wouldn't be able to eat. Yang Yi quickly shut his mouth and only picked up food for them. She was small and couldn't stand up to pick up food on her own, so Yang Yi did what Murphy was supposed to do. At the same time, he also picked up soft and smooth tofu and sweet and sour squid for Murphy. Murphy was actually not used to others picking up food for her. She had been raised to be very independent since she was young, and she even resisted other people's attentions. But this time, it was a little different. Yang Yi was picking up food for her. For some reason, a very strange feeling lingered in her heart. Was it warmth? Was it happiness? Or what was it? Murphy couldn't explain it clearly. So she hesitated for a moment and didn't refuse. Actually, it's because the food he cooks is too delicious. Murphy found an excuse for herself in her heart. Otherwise, I wouldn't give him face. Yang Yi's food was, of course, delicious. Murphy and she were so full that they didn't want to move from their chairs. In the end, Yang Yi cleared the table and suggested, "Let's go to the dam for a walk." "No, I'm not going." Murphy shook her head. "What's the problem?" "It's night now, there's basically no one on the dam, and the wind is comfortable," Yang Yi persuaded. "Let's go out for a walk and take it as a distraction. I'll drive you back in a while." She was interested. She stretched her arms high to attract her father's attention and then shouted, "I want to go too, I want to go too." "Okay then." Murphy hesitated for a moment and then agreed. The night wind blew from the Grand Canal, and 3 figures, 2 big and 1 small, appeared on the dark river dam. Yang Yi walked at the back, carefully protecting the 2 in front. Cici walked in the first, but her little hand was held by Mo Fei. The dam was actually very spacious, and there was a tall protective fence, but Murphy was still worried. Actually, this was the first time Yang Yi and Murphy went out for a walk together. If it weren't for Shi, the cheerful person who kept laughing, the atmosphere might have been a little awkward. But even so, Murphy and Yang Yi still didn't know how to talk to each other. They were silent and kept silent. It was Yang Yi who broke the silence. He said, "I quite like your song, Strangers." In the darkness, the water of the Grand Canal gently lapped against the dam. The sound of the water rushing against the dam was very soothing. Murphy turned her head and saw Yang Yi's bright eyes in the darkness. As if they had a telepathic connection, Mo Fei said softly, "How about I sing it for you now?" "But there's no accompaniment," Yang Yi said with some regret. "The inky cold night rain. Can't wet my heart, just like this old road. Can't wait for the person to come, forever unable to rush, that deep mark of love." Murphy's ethereal voice, with its own melody, was already softly singing. Yang Yi closed his mouth and listened quietly. She, who liked her mother's singing the most, was no longer naughty. She obediently followed her mother's steps, as if she was also following her mother's rhythm. You said that this road is a little dark, but you're not willing to accompany me. The so-called care is only left with indifference. I can only bear the sadness alone. Murphy's singing was sad and tired, like an intoxicating red wine. Yang Yi was a little intoxicated listening to it. Yang Yi looked at Murphy's beautiful figure in the darkness. This quiet and beautiful woman was like an orchid in an empty valley, and actually made people feel pity for her. He couldn't help but have some fanciful thoughts. Strangers. Then, what road were the two of them walking on now? Chapter 74. After sending off Murphy, Yang Yi welcomed a new customer the next day. The deputy manager of the copyright department and the managers of several publishing houses accompanied by him came to Yang Yi's coffee shop. This time, Yang Yi didn't treat them to the best coffee. He put away his treasured Blue Mountain and mandolin. Instead, he made a simple mocha with milk and sugar cubes, which was praised by everyone. Obviously, there was a lot of flattery involved. Yang Yi smiled but did not say anything. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. When it came to negotiations, Yang Yi was not an expert. His best helper was Guazi. Although the little fatty had already finished his college entrance examination, he gave Yang Yi a call with a smile and went on a graduation trip with his classmates. Naturally, he could not be counted on. However, although Yang Yi did not know how to negotiate, he had brought a magical skill from his previous life, acting. Moreover, he acted like he had a card up his sleeve. When the negotiations started, he acted like he had a card up his sleeve. He asked the publishing houses to use the method of bidding and show him the conditions they had drafted. I hope that everyone can be honest. I will choose the final publishing house according to your conditions. After that, we will discuss in detail. This is to avoid wasting everyone's time. Yang Yi said with a smile. The managers of the publishing houses looked at each other. This was the first time they had met an author like this. Manager Huang, isn't this a little problematic? One of the managers could not help but ask the person in charge of the copyright department. I don't think so. Another manager agreed. Deputy Manager Huang of the copyright department smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said, I think it's okay. Cough cough, it's like this. Because we have discussed with Mr. Yang Yi before, he will have the final say in the transaction of the physical publishing rights. Therefore, we will discuss according to Mr. Yang Yi's request. You can think about it. If you don't want to participate in this bid, it doesn't matter. Even if we don't have a deal, our friendship is still there. Yang Yi also looked unyielding. He did not know what conditions the other party would give him, but Yang Yi was convinced that his books, whether it was Soldier Assault or Drawing Sword, would definitely sell well as long as they were out in physical form. This was tested by the market in his previous life. In an era where piracy was rampant, Drawing Sword, which was published in the new era, sold more than 400,000 copies in 6 or 7 years. It was obvious how valuable it was. In this world where copyright awareness was strong, Yang Yi could already foresee the prospects of his two so-called web novels, and physical book sales leaps and bounds. Therefore, he was confident that he was not afraid of negotiations. Sure enough, after the managers of several publishing houses looked at each other, the manager who shouted the loudest was the first to pick up a pen and paper. The others also swarmed over and almost fought over it. The selection process of the hidden bid was needless to say. In the end, Yang Yi picked up an envelope and said loudly like a broker at the stock exchange, Mr. Liu from Sahara Publishing, congratulations. We can discuss further in detail now. A thin man with messy hair stood up in surprise. He raised his hand and said, I'm Mr. Liu. However, Yang Yi's choice caused an uproar in the room. Even Deputy Manager Huang was surprised. Are you kidding me? The manager who shouted the loudest just now jumped out again. He shouted angrily, What kind of conditions did Sahara Publishing offer you? I don't believe that a small publishing house like them can offer better conditions than our big publishing houses. Well, I'm sorry. It's not convenient for me to disclose it to you. Yang Yi smiled and refused. Deputy Manager Huang couldn't help but stand up. He said, Mr. Yang Yi, although it's not suitable for me to interrupt at this time, shouldn't you consider it again? In terms of scale, Sahara Publishing is indeed smaller than the other three. Even if the conditions given to you are better now, in the long run, it's difficult for them to give you the benefits from sales to be comparable to the other three. That's right. You're too short-sighted. The other three managers echoed one after another. The thin Mr. Liu actually didn't have much hope when he saw the other three competitors, but now that he was chosen, he was as happy as if he had won a prize. But now that Deputy Manager Huang and the others said so, he became nervous again. He was afraid that the duck that was in his mouth would fly away again. He quickly said, although our publishing house is not big, we are very sincere. Mr. Yang, we can still discuss the conditions that you just wrote. Yang Yi raised his hand to quiet them down. He said faintly, actually, the reason why I chose Sahara Publishing was not only because the conditions they offered were very sincere, but also because they have an advantage that the other three don't have. This time, everyone was stunned. Didn't Sahara Publishing say that it was smaller than the other three? What? The one who shouted the loudest couldn't help but ask. Sahara Publishing has an additional channel to sell physical books online compared to you all, Yang Yi said faintly. In fact, Yang Yi wasn't calm. The online shopping model in this world had only shown a small sign, and it wasn't as big as Taobao in his previous life. Yang Yi was surprised by Sahara Publishing's foresight. Their boss set up an online website to sell physical books. Readers could pay for books through registered mail or bank transfer, and then send the books to the readers through the library. This model was very similar to the earliest Zhua, 99, and Dang Dang in Yang Yi's previous life. It could be said that this was the prototype of an online bookstore. What's the difference between this and online novels? With this kind of online sales, they won't be able to sell more than a few books a month, and the readers still have to pay for the books by mail. It's not even as good as us. Our company has connections with Far East and Zhonghua bookstores. There were always people who were still stuck in the old mindset, and they mocked Yang Yi's choice. However, Yang Yi's choice didn't change, and he calmly apologized to the other party. In the end, only Yang Yi and Mr. Liu were left in the coffee shop. Everyone else left in anger, and even Deputy Manager Huang smiled bitterly. He clasped his hands at Yang Yi, and then chased after them. Deputy Manager Huang felt that the profits from physical sales of Yang Yi's books weren't a big deal, but he still had to establish good relations with these publishers. After all, online literature was still the weak side, and publishing houses had a lot of resources, and there were still many things that needed to be done with them. Then Mr. Liu, whose hair was messy, said nervously. He didn't dare to touch the new coffee that Yang Yi had served him. Then let's talk about the conditions for me to invest in your publishing house. Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. This aura immediately scared Mr. Liu silly. It was unknown how Mr. Liu would feel if he knew that Yang Yi's savings were less than a few $100,000, but he still wanted to invest in someone else's publishing house. Chapter 75. Yang Yi wanted to be involved in the Sahara Publishing House, or strictly speaking, the Sahara Online Bookstore. Of course, it was not a decision that a small manager like Mr. Liu could make. Mr. Liu asked the boss in fear and trepidation. Then, the negotiation was postponed, and the boss personally came out. After sending away the guest, Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Shi, who was hiding on the sofa and peeping at them, ran over and acted like a spoiled child, asking her father to hug her. Yang Yi doted on the little girl a little. After all, she was the closest person to him in terms of blood and affection. He picked up Shi and let her sit on his strong arms. "Papa, do you have a lot of money?" Shi's voice was soft, and her small hands were also soft. She grabbed the flesh on her father's cheek and played with it while asking. Yang Yi's whole body was full of muscles, but when his daughter grabbed him like this, even steel would turn into molten iron. Even a tough man could not escape from her soft hands. "Well, I have some money. What's wrong? Is our she going to be Dad's little housekeeper?" Yang Yi laughed happily, so gentle that it was not like him. "No, no." The little girl twisted her butt and waved her hand to explain, she wants Papa to give some money to Mom. Mom is so pitiful. This time, Yang Yi was confused. Give money to Murphy? Regardless of whether Murphy wanted his money or not, Yang Yi gave money to Murphy. Wasn't that stupid? This woman was too rich. Not to mention the mansion, who knew how much money she had saved over the years. Yang Yi thought about his six-figure savings and secretly laughed. The other party's money was probably dozens or even hundreds of times more than his. "Why do you say your mother is pitiful?" Yang Yi asked puzzledly. "On TV, Mom is so pitiful. She's being bullied." She pouted and said, "Auntie also said that Mom worked very hard, but the bad guy on TV said that Mom didn't." She was still very naive. She took her father's hand and looked at him pitifully with her big eyes. She begged, "Papa, can you give some money to Mom so that Mom won't be so sad? She can also spend more time with she." Yang Yi finally understood the ins and outs of the problem. He smiled somewhat helplessly and reached out his hand to rub the little fellow's head. Today, he didn't braid her hair. It was so soft and smooth that it felt especially good. "Your mother, how should I put it? She didn't work for money." Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, "Your mother likes singing, so she wants to try again and return to the stage she is familiar with." She looked at her father in confusion and tried hard to understand what her father said. Yang Yi also tried to explain in simple words, so in the process, she may be criticized or questioned by others, but this is the process that your mother has to bear. Just like she wants to eat delicious tiramisu, she has to wait a long time for Dad to make it. Then she doesn't want to eat tiramisu, she can eat a small cake. The little girl didn't understand at all and said anxiously, she doesn't want Mom to be scolded. As she spoke, the mist floated up. The little girl's skin was white and translucent, and it was easy to see the change. So immediately, her eyes turned red and she was about to cry. Yang Yi quickly comforted her. Okay, she, don't worry, Dad will find a way. I won't let your mother be depressed forever." "Really?" She suddenly became happy with tears in her eyes and asked happily, "Is Papa going to help Mom?" In fact, she was subconsciously thinking about the problem of money. Back then, Yang Yi took her to the bank to withdraw money. Seeing is believing. She felt that since her father had so much money, he would definitely be able to help her mother. "Of course. If I don't help your mother, who else can?" Yang Yi smiled faintly. Although he was very calm, his eyes were shining with confidence. Of course, Yang Yi wasn't thinking about money. In fact, he had already started to choose suitable songs for Murphy. With such a large music library in his previous life, Yang Yi didn't worry about whether he could write songs for Murphy. He also contributed to the sales of more than 10 copies of Murphy's new album. He bought all of Murphy's new albums on a shelf in an audio and video store. However, when he came back and listened to it, he could still understand why the media had been pessimistic about Murphy's comeback. In the new album, except for a few old songs that were very good, the 8 new songs, including the title song, were all songs of poor quality. Perhaps Yang Yi's judgment standards were indeed very strict, but Yang Yi felt that if Murphy wasn't Shishi's mother, he would never buy such an album. However, Murphy's voice and singing were still impeccable. Yang Yi even felt that Murphy was better than before she retired. Perhaps it was because she had more experience, or perhaps it was because she still persevered in practicing over the years, or perhaps it was because of the precipitation and accumulation in many aspects. Yang Yi believed that as long as there were good songs, Murphy would definitely be able to amaze the world. Of course, there was still a problem now. Murphy's previous attitude made Yang Yi have a wrong understanding. Murphy definitely didn't want him to intervene in her career. If he proposed to write songs for her, with her stubborn character, she would definitely not be willing. From God's perspective, Yang Yi's idea was obviously a misunderstanding. But who asked Murphy to hold a relatively old understanding of Yang Yi? Once Yang Yi mentioned Murphy's work, Murphy was a little sensitive. Of course, Yang Yi also had a concern. That was, if he wrote songs for Murphy, would Murphy be suspicious again? Yang Yi had shown 3 skills that Yang Yi didn't have before: making coffee, writing, and cooking. These were things that Mo Fei could barely accept. But in terms of music, Murphy herself was an expert. How could she not know that music wasn't learned in a few years? Yang Yi not only resisted the entertainment industry in the past, but also showed that he didn't know anything about music. At this time, if he suddenly took out a few well-produced songs, how could Murphy not be suspicious? Therefore, Yang Yi had always been hiding. At most, when he was alone, or after she went to sleep, he would play the guitar, play the songs he liked in his previous life, or learn some of the excellent music works in this world. In front of Murphy, he didn't dare to show it. In the future, maybe he could gradually let Murphy see his musical talent, but this might need a process before she could accept it naturally. But now, Yang Yi still decided to use the side account, Mu Xiang, to write songs for Murphy. Because of this, Yang Yi had also closed the private information of the stage name Mu Xiang on the copyright organization. Other than Chen Yijie and the others from Tianxiang who knew who Mu Xiang was, the others, or Murphy, would have a hard time finding out who wrote songs for her. This was fun. Chapter 76. Just as Yang Yi was preparing to write a song for Murphy, who had always been clean and didn't have any scandals, suddenly broke out in a scandal. Older sister, younger brother? Murphy exposed to love with Zhu Jie. The news was spread through an entertainment media with its own portal. This kind of news was actually not surprising. There were often all kinds of gossip or rumors. Only those small newspapers that specialized in spreading scandals would compete to report those rumors that had no concrete evidence. But this time was different. The website exposed photos, and there were more than 1 or 2. Although they were secretly taken, it could clearly be seen that Zhu Jie and Murphy were talking intimately. What's more, in the last photo, it could be seen that Zhu Jie was hugging Murphy. What if this wasn't concrete evidence? Then what was? Immediately, all the major media and tabloids reprinted it. The media was still okay, but the tabloids had no integrity at all. Shocking. Jade female songstress actually did such a thing with underage man. This was the title of a tabloid in Guangdong province. It was quite similar to the style of the UC shocking department in Yang Yi's previous life. It was said that after it was printed, the sales increased greatly. Frustrated in the music world, successful in love, Murphy fell into the trap of love? Disappointing, Murphy's golden flower has also been plucked. Murphy, who had been silent for a long time because of the album, once again appeared on the headlines of major media. This news was really too hot. Whether or not they were Murphy's fans, people who had once understood Murphy's brilliance were all talking about it. The sudden surge in popularity also added fuel to the sales of Murphy's new album. But Murphy wasn't happy to see this scene. After she learned the news from Mo Shaowan, she angrily rushed back to Zhongqing and directly rushed to Sister Ling's office. "Why did you do this?" Murphy gritted her teeth and asked angrily. "What do you mean?" Sister Ling pretended to be innocent. But Murphy didn't buy it. She tightly gripped the back of the chair and said, "Sister Ling, we've worked together for 7 or 8 years. Do you think I don't know what you're best at? But we've always agreed that I won't touch these things. Why are you still using me?" "Use you?" At this moment, Niu Meiling did not pretend anymore. Ignoring Murphy's frown, she lit a thin and long cigarette, took a puff, and then leisurely said, "Murphy, how old are you? How can you still not distinguish between good and bad? Should I use you or help you?" Without waiting for Murphy to respond, she threw out a document and said to Murphy, "Look at the sales of your album. It's all thanks to the hype over the past 2 days. Otherwise, where would you get more than 200,000 yuan? In the last week, Except for a few relatively BT albums, normal album sales will enter a period of weakness. Murphy's album is the same. Before the sales increase, there are only 5,000 or 6,000 copies left. To suddenly increase to more than 100,000 a day, this is obviously more surprising. But I don't need it, Murphy said coldly. I don't need such results. Even if I lose, I want to lose fair and square. Murphy's personality is very straightforward, or it can be said that she is a clear stream in the entertainment industry. She wants real results and can't tolerate a little sand in her eyes. Murphy, you have to understand. Nyo Myling shouted and said, now you are no longer the top star from before. You can't even enter the A-list. The company still gives you so many resources, but your results can't be compared to others. Song Yun, Han Fei, their last album's results are better than yours, right? Why are you still so arrogant? You don't listen to the company's arrangements? Murphy was stunned. She looked at the other party in a daze and suddenly felt that this Sister Ling, who used to like and understand her, was a little strange. Nyo Myling also realized that her tone was a little harsh and accidentally shouted out the fire in her heart. After all, she is one of the biggest managers in the entertainment industry, so she quickly controlled her temper. Isn't the company's arrangement for your own good? Nyo Myling's voice became gentler, as if Sister Ling had returned. Murphy, you have to understand that Sister Ling also wants to fight for better results for you so that you won't be laughed at. But why didn't you discuss it with me first? Murphy was still brooding. If I discussed it with you, would you have agreed? Nyo Myling waved her hand and smiled. So, Sister Ling can only kill first and report later. It seems that the effect is not bad. However, Murphy really didn't like this feeling. She bit her lower lip and said, I'm going to clarify it with the reporters. She added, she can see it. I don't want her to think that Mom is such a person who will do anything for results. You can clarify it, but not now. Nyo Myling's attitude was firm and soft. Murphy, you have to understand Sister Ling's difficulties. Wait a few more days and clarify it after this week, okay? Sister Ling is begging you. With that said, how could Murphy continue to fight with the other party? After all, she was indebted to Sister Ling. Coming out of Sister Ling's office, Murphy met the other main character of the scandal, Zhu Jie. These days, Zhu Jie could be said to be in high spirits. He also benefited from this scandal and received a lot of attention. It was as if he was going to go from a third-tier celebrity to a second-tier celebrity. He was so proud that even his cologne was thicker. However, Murphy didn't give him any face this time. She kept a cold face and completely ignored Zhu Jie's greeting. She walked away with a hostile aura. TCH. After Mo Fei left, Zhu Jie turned his head in disdain, turned around, and pushed the door open. Auntie Ling, I think I'm in a good state right now. Why don't we strike while the iron is hot and arrange an album for me? Coming out of the company, even though it was a hot summer day, Murphy still felt cold as she got into Mo Xiaojuan's car. Sister, where are we going? Mo Xiaojuan asked with trepidation. To Yang. Murphy suddenly stopped. She hesitated for a moment and changed her words. Let's go home. I'm tired. When Murphy got home, she curled up on the sofa tiredly. The nanny, Auntie Zhu, saw this and quickly hid in her nanny's room. Murphy hesitated for a moment before taking out her phone and dialing Yang Yi's number. The phone rang for a long time before Yang Yi picked it up. Hello. Yang Yi's voice was very calm. Murphy was silent for a moment before saying, Don't believe the scandal in the newspaper. Okay. Murphy suddenly felt wronged. That was arranged by the company to create hype. I didn't know about it. I know. Yang Yi still replied calmly. But the more he was like this, the more flustered Murphy felt. She angrily said, You're jealous. I'm not. Yang Yi replied after a while. Well, this time it was a lie. Yang Yi was indeed jealous, although he didn't understand what that feeling was. Anyway, after seeing the news, his heart was flustered. But what Yang Yi said before was true. He knew that this was a publicity stunt. He could see it from the photos. Yang Yi's sharp eyes could immediately distinguish whether it was a real hug or a mistake. However, even so, looking at the headlines of the news, Yang Yi felt very unhappy. Then he really wanted to cut that brat into 2 pieces. In his previous life, those who angered him, no one could leave a whole corpse. But Murphy's phone call and explanation made his mood better. Of course, with his character, it was hard for him to show it. "You are." Murphy sensitively thought that Yang Yi had become cold and indifferent. She felt so wronged that she wanted to die. She even sounded like she was about to cry. It was obviously not her fault. "Okay, I'm really not jealous. Don't worry." Yang Yi had a headache and could only coax her like how he coaxed Shi. "I've already told you the truth. You're not allowed to be jealous." Murphy pursed her lips and said very seriously, "Okay, I'm not jealous. You are. This silly Scorpio." Chapter 77. Mo Fei's scandal got bigger and bigger under the influence of some people with ulterior motives. But for Yang Yi, he still believed in his own eyes. Whether there was something going on between Mo Fei and that Jew Jie, it could be seen from those secretly taken photos. What's more, Murphy also explained it to him, so Yang Yi didn't take it to heart. On the contrary, Murphy was worried and uncomfortable, while Yang Yi, who had a big heart, happily took his daughter to the temple fair according to the original plan. In addition to many well-preserved ancient villages in Tingshan district, there were also some interesting traditional customs, such as the temple fair in the middle of every month. Yang Yi heard from the neighbors that this temple fair was very popular and large-scale. Whether it was the old people who liked traditional customs, the young people who liked bustling places, or the greedy children, they could all find their fun. Yang Yi had been looking forward to it for a long time, so he specially asked when the temple fair would be held this month. Finally, the day came. In the evening, without having dinner, Yang Yi set off with Shi. "Papa, I want to eat a lot of delicious food." Shi sat in the car and couldn't hold back her excitement. Like a lark, she chattered with her sweet voice. "How much delicious food is there? You and Papa have never been there. How do you know there will be a lot of delicious food?" Yang Yi teased her. "What if there is no delicious food?" She covered her mouth with her 2 small hands, and her big eyes were full of surprise. The naive little fellow believed it, and hurriedly asked nervously, "What should we do? Is she going to be hungry?" Originally, Shi was very cute, but now she was serious. It was even more fun. Ha 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 ha. Yang Yi couldn't help laughing because of his daughter. For safety, he gently stepped on the clutch to slow down the car. "Oh, Shi wants to eat something delicious." The little girl was unwilling to comply and cried out. Yang Yi smiled and said, "All right, there will be a lot of delicious food. Daddy promises. I won't let Shi starve." The temple fair was not held in the university town, but on the street of City God Temple at the foot of the North Pavilion Mountain. Before they arrived, Yang Yi could already feel the excitement. His car couldn't enter, so he had to find a parking lot far away. In the afterglow of the setting sun, Yang Yi held Shi's little hand and walked over. Because there was a slight slope, they could see a spacious but somewhat crowded long street from afar. There were many shops on both sides of the street, but more of them were street vendors who took advantage of the spacious street to set up their stalls. There were also many wandering hawkers pushing carts and hawking their wares. It was only when they got closer that they could feel the liveliness of the place. Signboards hung high above their heads, banners fluttered in the wind, and people surged around them, jostling shoulder to shoulder. The sounds of hawking, shouting, chatting, and laughter rang in their ears. It was even noisier than a wet market. There are so many people. She was a little nervous. Obviously, it was the first time for her to encounter such a complicated environment. She was so small, but all she could see were all kinds of legs. She couldn't help but raise her head and see strange and scary adults. She always felt that she was going to be pushed around by the rolling crowd, so she held her father's hand tightly in fear. Suddenly, she felt that her armpit was lifted, and then her whole body flew up as if she was riding on the clouds. She rotated and sat on her father's neck. Oh! She hurriedly held her father's head tightly, for fear that she would fall. It was not the first time that she had experienced this action, but every time she sat on his neck, she would be very nervous, and the feeling of slight dizziness was very scary. "You're covering Daddy's eyes." Yang-yi smiled helplessly. He reached out to pull Shi's clothes. Today, Shi was wearing denim shorts, a short-sleeved t-shirt, and a small vest, which looked fresh and delicate. Of course, sitting on her father's neck, it was not easy for her to be exposed. After adapting to the feeling of being in the air, Cici became lively. Not only could she see far from where she was sitting, but her field of vision had also widened. More importantly, she was hugging her father's head, so she didn't have to worry about being squeezed. The little girl's sense of security slowly increased. "It smells so good." She looked around happily, and kept calling her father, "Papa, look, there are so many delicious things. Papa, look, what is this?" Yang-yi was still very patient. Although sometimes he was interrupted by his daughter when he saw the calligraphy and painting stall that he was interested in, Yang-yi still patiently followed his daughter's instructions. "This is a sugar figurine. The boss's skill is good." Yang-yi was also interested. He did not expect that this old business still existed in this world. Perhaps even if there were differences in history, some livelihood developed from material needs would still appear. "Hey, this little brother has good eyesight." The old man, whose business was very good and busy, looked up at Yang-yi and Shi, and said with a smile, "My skill of drawing sugar figurines was learned in Sichuan province. Birds, beasts, trees, flowers, fruits, as long as you name it, there is nothing that I can't draw. Look, Shi also wants it." The little girl said enviously when she saw the grandfather stick a painted sugar figurine on the bamboo chopsticks, gently scoop it up, and hand it to a young man next to him. "Then I'll have to trouble you to draw a dragon for my daughter." Yang-yi smiled and said, "She is a dragon." "You have to draw those cute little dragons," Cici added. The little girl was talking about the cartoon dragon that her father used to draw for her, a cartoon version. She preferred that kind of little dragon. It was very cute and looked better than the big dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Yang-yi smiled. He put Shi down and said to the old man, "The dragon she wants is not as fierce as the ones in our usual New Year's pictures. It is shorter, has a bigger head, and looks more cute." It was a pity that there were no strokes. Otherwise, Yang-yi could draw it for the other party as a reference. "It doesn't matter. Grandpa will draw one for you. What do you think? What do you think?" the old man said to Shi with a smile. Shi nodded shyly. The old man first boiled the sugar. As he boiled, he introduced, "The real skill of drawing a sugar figurine is not only in the drawing, but also in boiling the sugar. If the sugar is too thick and thin, don't even think about drawing a good sugar figurine." After all, the old man had been a craftsman for most of his life. He was very confident in his skills. After boiling the sugar, he calmed down and scooped up the syrup with a spoon. Using the spoon as a pen, he drew on the copper plate. He was not inferior to a calligrapher who wrote big characters. The old man moved his wrist and the spoon. Sometimes he lifted it, sometimes he shook it, sometimes he paused, and sometimes he deepened it. The embryonic form of a small dragon had already appeared. Shi also stood on tiptoe and looked curiously. However, she did not dare to breathe loudly. She was so sincere that it was as if she was looking at a very delicate work of art. She was afraid that it would break if she breathed. Finally, the old man finished drawing. It was indeed a traditional dragon, but the head was a little bigger and the feet were a little shorter. It looked very funny. However, it had to be said that the old man's skills were very good. The lines on the dragon's body were clear, and the beard and hair at the corners of the dragon's mouth were also drawn. When gently scooped up, the thin beard and hair were still firmly stuck to the dragon's body. The old man stuck the sugar figurine with a bamboo stick and shook it in front of Shi. He asked with a smile, "Little girl, do you think Grandpa's drawing is good?" "It's good." She was stunned. She hugged her father's leg and said obediently, "Then do you want it?" The old man asked with a smile. She looked at her father embarrassedly, but the desire in her eyes was revealed. Yang Yi smiled and took out the money. How could he not want it? He even gave her an extra 100 yuan as his respect and support for his rival's skills. However, Shi held this little sugared dragon in her hand and was unwilling to eat it the entire night. Chapter 78. Like a cloud that just came out of the mountains. I only thought that he was frivolous, but it turned out that his bones were not vulgar. Demure like a flower shining on the water, moving like a willow in the wind. Delicate eyebrows and corners of eyes, gentle voice and smile. Clearly an outsider in front of me, but in the bottom of my heart, I feel like an old friend. Although there was a lot of food at the temple fair, there were also many things to play and watch. Along the way, Yang Yi took his daughter to enjoy the performances of many Jianghu artists, such as juggling, playing with monkeys, and small fights. A traveling circus performed Shaoxing opera in the open air, which attracted many old people to watch. P.S. When it comes to Shaoxing opera, you may not have any idea what it is. At the beginning of the chapter, the famous section of Shaoxing opera, Sister Lin Fell from the Sky, was selected from the Shaoxing opera, Dream of the Red Chamber. Many people should have heard of it. Of course, in this world, Dream of the Red Chamber does not exist, so Xiaohan deleted the opening, Sister Lin Fell from the Sky. Yang Yi, who was listening to Shaoxing opera for the first time, also watched with great interest for a while until Shi was a little impatient, and then he walked away. After all, it was difficult for a child to come into contact with traditional opera without special talent or the influence of her grandparents. However, there were still many things to play at the temple fair. Instead of staying in the same place for too long, it was better to walk around and see more new things. Along the way, they ate a lot of food, such as beef offal, fried dough twist, bowl cake, and so on. It seemed that there were all kinds of delicious food from all over the world. Shi's little belly was already bulging, but she still wanted more. "Papa, I want this." She seemed to see something. She excitedly shook her little butt, raised her hand and shouted. Yang Yi was afraid that Shi would fall, so he quickly raised his hand and supported her little butt from behind. Then he smiled and said, "You still want to eat? Think about how much you ate tonight. You'll be full later and your stomach will hurt." She moved her little feet and said, "It's not food. Papa, look, that big bear baby is very cute. I want a big bear baby." At this moment, Yang Yi looked in the direction Cici was pointing at. It turned out that it was not a food stall, but a balloon stall set up by several young people in the village. Customers could use money to exchange for small darts. 10 yuan for 5, 20 yuan for 12. And the attractive dolls on the side were their prizes. However, what Cici said was wrong. The big bear cub that she seemed to like very much wasn't a bear. How could Yang Yi not recognize the black and white color and the dark circles under its eyes that seemed to be covered in eyeshadow? "This is a giant panda plushie." Seeing Yang Yi coming over, especially seeing Cici's shining eyes, a young man knew that there was a chance. He hurriedly came up and said, "If you can break the balloon with 3 of your 5 darts, you can get a third prize from us. If you can break the balloon with 4 darts, you can get a second prize from us. What kind of result does the giant panda need? Hit all 5 darts?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. Yang Yi was not interested in those small prizes, and she was only interested in the giant panda plushie. Now that the little girl saw her father talking to someone else, she did not dare to shout loudly. She leaned over to her father's ear and whispered, "Yes, I want this big bear baby. This is our special prize this time." The young man puffed out his chest and said proudly, "You have to spend 20 yuan to participate in the ultimate challenge. This time the challenge is 12 darts. As long as you hit 10 balloons, you can get our giant panda plushie. Obviously, this requirement was a bit high. There was an endless stream of people coming in, and a lot of small gifts were given out, but this obviously expensive giant panda plushie was still not one. Give me 20 yuan. Yang Yi put Shishi down and smiled as he took out the money. Okay. The young man took it and eagerly prepared the darts for Yang Yi. Seeing that someone was playing the ultimate challenge, several guests who were throwing darts stopped one after another. Many tourists who were watching also came over to watch excitedly. Seeing so many people, Shishi was actually a little nervous, so she grabbed her father's pants. However, she proudly puffed out her chest, clenched a small fist, and whispered, "Papa, you can do it." The onlookers were all amused by Shishi's cute appearance. This child is so beautiful. So cute. She will be amazing when she grows up. She will definitely be a beauty. Uncle, you can do it. You can do it. Everyone was talking at once. Although it did not affect Yang Yi, he still nodded at everyone and smiled as he patted Shishi's little head. If this was in the past, Yang Yi would have ignored other people's voices. Now that he was influenced by the environment, or maybe it was because he became a father, his personality gradually became more easygoing. Yang Yi was a master of cold weapons in his previous life. He played with guns, but his favorite weapons were knives and all kinds of small hidden weapons. How could these small darts stump him? Yang Yi held the dart, raised his hand, and threw it casually. Pfft. This was not the sound of a balloon exploding. The dart was stuck on the foam board next to the balloon. Yang Yi's expression suddenly became awkward. That relaxed and casual look seemed to have become a joke. No way? How could it miss? Yang Yi frowned. He felt that his technique and strength were very moderate. It was not much different from his previous life when he never missed. Yang Yi did not believe it and tried again. Pfft. The onlookers sighed in pity. Sigh. Darts are not thrown like this, right? Some people couldn't help but want to comment. In their opinion, throwing a dart was done after aiming for a long time. How could it be like Yang Yi, who didn't even seem to aim and threw the dart with his hand from his waist? How could he possibly hit the target? But this time, Yang Yi did not pay attention to them. He frowned and looked at the remaining 10 darts in his hand. So that's how it works. When Yang Yi tried the second dart, he felt that there was a problem with the feel of the dart the moment it flew out. The boss had done something to the tail. When the dart flew out, it was difficult to maintain a relatively straight line due to air resistance. Although it was a parabola, it could be close to a straight line if the speed was fast enough. Therefore, the more accurate the aim, the more likely it was to miss. Yang Yi found the problem and threw the next dart. Of the remaining 10 darts, Yang Yi threw 8 of them and missed 2. Although Yang Yi had grasped the trajectory of the darts, there were always a few that had been tampered with, but the deflection angle was different. Congratulations to this gentleman for winning the first prize. The young man saw so many onlookers and raised his voice. He was ready to take the first prize and take the opportunity to call on everyone to challenge him. No need, I will try again. Please collect the darts I used just now. I still want to challenge with them. Yang Yi rejected his first prize and handed him another 20 yuan. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.